The clang of hammer on anvil echoes through the narrow streets of medieval London. The weight of a freshly forged sword is dropped onto a pile in the blacksmith's guild, its metal glinting in the morning sun. In this bustling market square, the aroma of roasting meat wafts from a nearby butcher's stall, enticing passers-by with promises of fresh venison and mutton. Nearby, a young apprentice named Thomas polishes a set of armor adorned with the emblem of the Earl of Kent. The intricate design on his chest is said to be worth at least 20 gold pennies. What if this very sword were used in battle tomorrow? What if it left a trail of blood and death through the city's streets, leaving the people cowering in fear? And what if Thomas himself was caught up in the chaos? Would he remember his family's words to always put faith in his Lord? If you're listening to this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these. Drop a comment and tell me where you are and what time it is. I read every single one. As night begins to fall over medieval London, the sounds of hammering fade into the distance, replaced by the hooting owls and scurrying rodents in the shadows. The smell of fresh bread wafts through the narrow alleys of medieval London, a tantalizing aroma that promises sustenance and comfort to weary residents. You are walking alongside the River Thames, following its gentle flow as it winds its way through the city's heart. The sun beats down upon your head, casting long shadows across the cobblestone streets. As you turn onto Fish Street, or so the sign above a nearby bakery claims, the scent of baking bread grows stronger still. Your stomach growls in anticipation. You've not eaten since breakfast, and the thought of sinking teeth into a warm loaf is almost too enticing to bear. You push open the creaking door of the bakery, and a bell above it lets out a tired clang. Inside, all is quiet except for the soft murmur of voices and the gentle thud of dough being punched down on wooden tables. The baker, his name is John, according to the sign above his stall, looks up from his work as you enter. "Good morrow," he says with a nod, wiping flour-dusted hands on a worn apron. You smile in return and take a seat at one of the nearby stools. John's wife Alice emerges from the back room with a tray bearing an assortment of breads, coarse, dark loaves, lighter, airier boule, and even some small, sweet pastries shaped like birds. She sets them down before you, her hands moving deftly as she arranges each item with care. You notice that one loaf seems slightly misshapen, perhaps it didn't rise quite right in the oven. John notices your gaze lingering on this particular bread and frowns, though he says nothing. It's only later, after you've finished eating and are walking away from the bakery, that you hear a whispered conversation between two passers-by. "Heard they're using too much ash to give it a darker crust," one of them says in hushed tones. "Don't spread rumors," a second voice chimes in. "You don't want John's business to suffer." You continue on your way, lost in thought as you ponder the strange dynamics at play within this small community. Why would someone intentionally seek to undermine another person's livelihood? As you walk further along Fish Street, the sounds of the city grow louder. Vendors hawking their wares, merchants calling out prices and competing for customers, the clanging of metal on stone from a nearby blacksmith. You begin to notice that each stall or shop seems to have its own distinct smell. Some are pleasant, fresh bread roasting meats, while others are less so, sweaty animal hides, decaying waste. You arrive at Cheapside, one of the city's main thoroughfares, and pause for a moment to take in the sights. Merchants from all corners of Europe line the street. There's a young German merchant with an impressive display of fine silks, an Italian trader peddling wares from his homeland, olive oil, wine, and even a few representatives from distant lands like Flanders or Bruges. Your gaze drifts toward a nearby stall selling fresh produce, mostly root vegetables, but also some bright green sprouts that seem to be the latest fad among the local cooks. You notice an old woman haggling with the vendor over the price of a particularly large carrot. Her face is creased by age and weather, but there's something else at play here as well. Perhaps it's a mixture of determination and wariness. As you continue your stroll through Cheapside, the sounds and smells begin to blend together in a rich tapestry. Horse hooves pounding on cobblestones, merchants calling out their wares, fresh bread. Vine silks, exotic spices, children laughing as they chase each other down alleys. You start to feel the rhythm of this place, how people move, interact with one another, and weave together into a living, breathing whole. Eventually, your meandering path leads you towards St. Paul's Cathedral, its towering spire rising above the rooftops like a giant finger pointing toward heaven. As you approach the churchyard, you notice an elderly man leaning against a nearby stone column. It appears to be some sort of official or functionary, judging by his formal attire. He eyes you with interest as you draw closer and introduces himself. I am Brother Thomas, one of the cathedral's minor clergy members. How doth your day fare? You chat for a bit about nothing in particular, the weather, recent market news, but eventually the conversation turns toward more practical matters, specifically your concerns about finding something decent to eat. Brother Thomas leans forward, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. If you're looking for something truly exceptional, I can recommend a nearby tavern. Their pies are made by nuns from a local convent and are said to be quite enlightening. You raise an eyebrow at this unusual endorsement. What exactly does he mean? But before you can press the issue further, Brother Thomas is called away on some urgent business. As you continue your exploration of medieval London, it occurs to you that perhaps there's more to life here than meets the eye. Beneath the surface-level din and bustle lies a rich tapestry of complex relationships between merchant and customer, vendor and patron, church official and commoner. As you navigate through the winding streets of medieval London, the cacophony of hawkers and merchants creates a dizzying melody that threatens to overwhelm your senses. Yet amidst this chaos, a peculiar scene catches your eye. A young baker, barely out of his teens, is huddled in conversation with a burly blacksmith. The intensity of their discussion is palpable as they gesture animatedly towards the nearby market stalls. Your curiosity piqued, you weave through the crowd to get closer, careful not to intrude on their private conversation. As you listen discreetly, it becomes clear that the baker and blacksmith are engaged in a heated debate about prices. The baker's stall is situated near the Church of St. Paul's, where many of London's wealthy merchants reside, and he has been struggling to find fair compensation for his wares. The master bakes bread by the dozen, the young man says, but when I bring it to market, the Lord takes a third of my profits as tithes. By the time I've paid the guild fees and given alms to the poor, there's barely enough left over for me to live on. The blacksmith scoffs at this claim. You think you have it hard. At least your work is done in the safety of your own shop. My forge is a constant source of danger, sparks flying everywhere, hot metal underfoot. And yet I'm still expected to pay tithes to the church. It's not fair. The baker's face reddens as he retorts, "At least you have a steady income from your lord." Merchants like me are at the mercy of every merchant who wants a cut. We're nothing but pawns in their game. This exchange is a microcosm of the larger social dynamics that underpin life in medieval London. On one hand, there's the complex web of relationships between merchants and patrons, where favors, gifts, and services are traded for influence and security. On the other hand, you have the struggles of artisans like the young baker, caught between their obligations to the church and guilds on one side and the whims of wealthy merchants on the other. As you continue your exploration of this vibrant city, these relationships begin to reveal themselves in intricate patterns. You notice how some market stalls are situated near prominent landmarks, say St. Paul's or the Tower of London, while others cluster around the great thoroughfares that traverse the city. The vendors and merchants operating along these key arteries cater primarily to travelers and locals alike, hawking wares from coarse linen shirts to exotic spices. Meanwhile, tucked away in more secluded alleys are smaller shops catering to specific needs, a milliner's boutique near St. Martin in the Fields for fashionable hats, a herbalist's den nestled between the Church of All Hallows by the Tower and the nearby riverbank for medicinal plants and remedies. Each area has its own distinct character, shaped by the personalities of those who live there. The baker, still fuming from his conversation with the blacksmith, sets about arranging an assortment of freshly baked loaves in front of his stall. As he does so, a gentle-faced woman approaches him, one of London's many widows, recognizable by her distinctive cap and apron. She haggles over prices for a day's worth of bread before finally purchasing the lot. The exchange is brief but illuminating. You realize that this widow may be more than just an ordinary customer. Perhaps she has a connection to the lord who owns the nearby estate, or maybe she's been entrusted with managing her late husband's business. Whatever her motivations, it becomes clear that every interaction in medieval London is layered with implicit assumptions and unseen relationships. You linger by the baker's stall for several hours, observing how different individuals come and go, each one revealing a distinct aspect of life in this city. A young apprentice arrives to help collect money from an early batch of customers. Later on, a group of rowdy apprentices bursts into the market, eager to celebrate their master craftsman's birthday with ale and music. These microcosms blend together like colors on a tapestry, rich hues, that gradually form a larger narrative about this intriguing place. The city itself becomes an organism, every individual a vital thread woven into its fabric, each transaction or encounter generating ripples of cause and effect throughout the urban ecosystem. As night falls, casting long shadows across London's bustling streets, you continue on your path, now more attentive to the intricate tapestry at play beneath the surface. You've made your way through the crowded streets of London, weaving past market stalls and vendors calling out their daily specials to anyone who'll listen. The smell of roasting meat wafts from a nearby stall, making your stomach growl with hunger, but you know better than to get too distracted by the enticing aromas. You've been walking for hours now, taking in the sights and sounds of this sprawling medieval city. You pass beneath the imposing stone facade of St. Paul's Cathedral, its intricate carvings a testament to the skilled craftsmen who built it centuries ago. The sound of hammering echoes through the air as stonemasons continue their work on the cathedral's facade, a reminder that even in this bustling metropolis, there is always more to be done. You continue north along Cheapside, one of London's busiest thoroughfares, lined with shops selling everything from fine silks and linens to candles and cooking pots. You brush past a group of rowdy apprentices making their way home from a long day's work in the nearby workshops. They're laughing and joking as they stumble through the crowded streets. As you turn onto Poultry Lane, you notice a small inscription on the wall of a nearby house. MCCCCLII. Your eyes narrow slightly as you try to decipher the date, 1353. But that can't be right. You've been walking these streets for weeks now, and you're sure it was only last year. Or so you thought. You pause in front of the inscription, lost in thought. What if the date on this stone is correct and everything else is wrong? What if 1353 really did mark a significant event, one that's been hidden beneath layers of tradition and legend for centuries? The sound of hammering from St. Paul's draws your attention back to reality. You continue walking, lost in thought as you ponder the implications of this seemingly innocuous inscription. As you make your way through London, you're surrounded by reminders of the city's daily rhythms. The chime of church bells, the creak of wooden wagons carrying goods from one end of town to another, and the constant stream of pedestrians, some hurrying with purpose, others ambling along as if they have all day. You pass through a narrow alleyway off Cheapside, where a group of washerwomen are scrubbing clothes in large tubs. The smell of soap and boiling water fills your nostrils as you watch them work their magic on the city's soiled linens, some of which look like they've been worn for years. You continue northward, eventually reaching the London Bridge, its wooden piers stretching out into the Thames below. You pause at the edge of the bridge to take in the view. A flotilla of boats chugs upstream towards the city's wharfs, while others wait patiently offshore, their captains and sailors scanning the horizon for any sign of favorable winds. As you gaze out across the water, you notice that one of the nearby buildings appears to be on fire. A group of men in leather aprons are scrambling about the rooftop, trying to put out the flames with buckets of sand and water. It's not a large blaze, but it's clear they've been caught off guard, perhaps by a stray spark from their own kitchen. You watch for several minutes as the firefighters work to extinguish the fire. They're a skilled lot, but you can tell they're struggling against time, and whatever unknown circumstances led to this unexpected conflagration. Eventually, the flames are brought under control, leaving behind a faint scent of smoke and charred wood that wafts through the air like an unwelcome guest. The city's inhabitants will be talking about this incident for days to come. Who started the fire? What caused it? You continue on your way as the sun reaches its peak in the sky above. You're getting hungry now, so you start scanning the street vendors and market stalls once more. Today's offerings are particularly enticing. Fresh bread from a nearby bakery, roasted meats from a traveling chef, or perhaps some pickled vegetables to add a tangy twist to your meal. As you ponder these options, you notice an elderly woman standing off to one side, watching with a keen eye as the crowd surges past her. She's dressed in simple yet practical clothing, woolen tunic and breeches, a cap on her head, and an apron tied around her waist. You sense that she might be a good person to talk to, perhaps someone who has lived through many of London's hidden secrets. But as you approach her, she greets you with a hint of wariness in her eyes, a sign that not everyone is eager to share their stories or knowledge with strangers. Good morrow, you say quietly, trying to sound non-threatening. What brings you out and about today? She glances at the nearby vendors before responding, as if unsure whether she should speak freely here on this crowded street. For a moment, it seems like she might turn away altogether, but then her expression softens slightly. I'm just getting some bread, she says finally, nodding towards a nearby stall where loaves of fresh bread are being sold from wooden barrels. I've been making sure the children in my household have enough to eat they can be quite vocal if their tummies growl too loudly. You smile at this wry observation, and she seems to relax ever so slightly. Perhaps there is room for conversation here after all. You smile back at her, and she seems to relax ever so slightly as you ask, so what's it like cooking for a household? I've never been much good with food myself. She looks up at you with a hint of amusement in her eyes. Ah, 'tis a challenge indeed, she says dryly. But someone has to do it. And between you and me, the young ones can be quite persuasive when their bellies are rumbling. You chuckle and lean back against the rough wooden beam that lines the ceiling of her small kitchen. The smell of roasting meat wafts through the air, making your stomach growl in sympathy with hers. She notices this and smiles wryly. I see you're hungry too. I'll have to make sure there's enough for two. She busies herself stirring a pot on the hearth, expertly juggling multiple tasks at once. As she works, you take in your surroundings. The kitchen is cramped but well organized, with shelves made of wooden planks and wicker baskets storing various dry goods like flour, oats, and beans. A clay water jug sits atop a nearby stool, its contents no doubt fresh from the well outside. You spot a small table in one corner, where she's set out an assortment of bread, cheese, and dried meats for her family to snack on. The warmth emanating from the fire pit creates a cozy atmosphere, despite the cold stone floor beneath your feet. As you glance around, you notice that the walls are adorned with various trinkets. A wooden spoon hangs from a nail above the cooking hearth. A woven basket full of herbs sits atop a nearby shelf. It's clear she takes pride in her work and has tried to make this space feel like home. As she hands you a chunk of bread and some cheese, you ask, "Tell me more about your household. How many children do you have?" She glances up at you with a hint of wariness, as if choosing how much to reveal. Well, she begins slowly, there's Emily, the eldest. She's 12 winters old now. Then there's little Thomas. He's only 6 but full of energy and always getting into mischief. A faint smile creeps onto her face at this mention of her child. And of course, baby Mary is our youngest. Born just last spring. You listen attentively as she continues to share stories about each of them, their likes, dislikes, and personalities. Her eyes light up when talking about Emily's love for learning or Thomas's antics during mealtime. For a brief moment, you forget that this is a woman from the lower rungs of society, speaking candidly with someone who might be considered above her station. As she finishes telling you about baby Mary's recent bout of teething, a faint knock at the door interrupts the conversation. She nods towards the wooden beam separating their kitchen from the main hall of their small house. Ah, that'll likely be my sister, Ilara, coming to collect some food for our family. The sound of footsteps echoes through the passageway outside as she gets up to answer the knock. When she returns with a wicker basket in hand, her expression turns serious once more. I'm afraid there's been talk among the market traders, she says quietly, lowering her voice so only you can hear. They're discussing, or rather speculating about, another famine this coming winter. You frown as comprehension dawns on you. London has experienced several famines in recent years due to crop failures and poor harvests, but you hadn't realized the situation was this dire. Is it true? You ask gently, trying not to reveal too much concern or emotion. Her eyes narrow slightly as she pauses before answering carefully. I'm no expert on such matters. But if what they're saying holds any truth, well, we'll need all the help and resources we can get. She glances around nervously, her voice barely above a whisper now. You are standing on the cobbled streets of medieval London, surrounded by the sounds and smells of a bustling market day. The sun beats down on your face, warming the stone beneath your feet as you make your way through the crowded alleys. You've been tasked with helping a local scribe locate a rare manuscript, but first, you need to navigate the labyrinthine streets of the city. As you walk, the smell of roasting meets wafts from nearby cookshops, enticing passers-by with promises of tender beef and savory spices. The aroma is almost overwhelming, but you press on, determined to find your destination. You've been warned that the scribe's workshop is nestled in a narrow alleyway near Cheapside, one of the most crowded thoroughfares in all of London. You push through the crowds, dodging vendors hawking their wares and pedestrians hurrying about their daily business. The air is thick with the smells of sweat, wood smoke, and fresh bread, not to mention the occasional waft of sewage from a nearby privy. You cover your nose against the worst of it, grateful for the relative comfort of your linen shirt. As you turn into Cheapside, you catch sight of a small inscription on the wall above one of the shops. It reads AD 1087. Your heart skips a beat as you take in the date, the same year that William the Conqueror supposedly commissioned his great survey of England, known as Doomsday Book. You've heard whispers about a copy of this document being hidden away somewhere in London, perhaps even in the scribe's workshop. But is it just a rumor? You press on, determined to investigate further. The inscription seems genuine enough, but what if it's just a prank or a mistake? As you approach the alleyway where the scribe's workshop should be located, you notice that one of the nearby buildings appears slightly askew. It looks as though someone has recently added an extra wooden beam to the structure, but the join is rough and uneven. You frown, not exactly the most skilled craftsmanship. You push open the creaky door and slip inside, your eyes adjusting slowly to the dim light within. The workshop itself appears cramped but neat, with rows of dusty shelves stretching up towards the ceiling. A lone scribe sits hunched over a desk in the corner, quills scratching across parchment as he works on some intricate script. You clear your throat to announce your presence, and the scribe looks up, startled. Ah, good morrow, you say with a smile, trying to put him at ease. but his expression remains wary even as he beckons you closer. "What brings you here today?" he asks gruffly, eyeing you over the rim of his spectacles. You take a deep breath and explain your quest for information about Doomsday Book, but the scribe's reaction is not what you expect. He leans back in his chair, steepling his fingers together as he regards you with an expression that borders on skepticism. "I'm afraid I know nothing of this document," he says finally, a hint of mischief dancing across his face. "What makes you think it exists?" You frown, taken aback by the scribe's response. You had expected him to be more knowledgeable, or at least, more interested in helping you find what you're looking for. As you press on with your questions, you begin to notice that something is off about this particular workshop. The air inside seems stale and musty, almost as if no one has bothered to ventilate the space recently. You catch a whiff of mildew wafting from a nearby shelf, and your eyes follow it to a stack of parchments bound together with twine. The scribe notices you eyeing the documents and frowns, swiftly covering them up. "Those are nothing," he mutters hastily. "Just some old account books." You press on, sensing that there's something more going on here than meets the eye. But as you continue to chat with the scribe, it becomes increasingly clear that he knows far more about Doomsday Book than he's letting on. As you prepare to leave, a faint memory tickles at the back of your mind, a snippet from an old conversation about an alleged copy of the survey hidden away in London. You can't quite place where or when you heard it, but something nags at you that this scribe might be more involved than he's letting on. You glance around the workshop, taking one last look at the narrow shelves and dusty corners. The room seems to hold secrets, but they're not immediately apparent. As you push open the creaky door to leave, a faint whisper catches your attention. "Be careful who you trust." The words seem to come from nowhere in particular, and yet, you can't shake the feeling that someone is watching from just out of sight. You make your way back through the winding streets of London, trying to piece together what little information you've gathered so far. The scribe's workshop seems suspiciously tidy, almost too well organized for a place where someone might be hiding documents. And yet, that faint smell of mildew lingers in your mind. As you stroll along Cheapside, the sounds and smells of the market day begin to recede into the background. You're lost in thought now, trying to untangle the threads of what seems like an increasingly complex mystery. The inscription on the wall, AD 1087, continues to nag at you as a puzzle waiting to be solved. And what about that faint whisper? Who might have spoken those words and why? You pause for a moment in front of a nearby butcher's stall, trying to clear your head and gather your thoughts. The butchers are busy arranging their wares on display, neatly arranged rows of fresh meat, interspersed with decorative bunches of herbs. As you wait, one of the apprentices catches your eye, a young lad about 10 years old, his face smeared with grease from handling all the raw meat. He looks up at you and grins mischievously, and for an instant, you wonder if he might be connected to whatever secret is unfolding in this city. The thought vanishes as quickly as it appears, but you can't help feeling that there's something here just beneath the surface. Something waiting to be uncovered. You continue on your way, trying to shake off the sense of unease that has settled over you like a fog. The streets are becoming increasingly familiar now, and yet, something nags at the edge of your consciousness. As you turn into Poultry Lane, one of London's most infamous thoroughfares, notorious for its rowdy taverns and rough trade, you can't help but feel that you're getting close to something. But what? The buildings seem to loom overhead now, tall timber-framed houses, with intricately carved signs creaking in the wind above each doorway. The air is thick with smoke from nearby chimneys, mingling with the smell of cooking meat and fresh bread. As you push through the crowds on Poultry Lane, a group of apprentices from one of the local guilds catches your eye, young men hauling heavy loads up to the top floor of their master's workshop. You watch for an instant as they laboriously climb the stairs, and then continue on your way. The streets are becoming increasingly narrow now, almost as if you're being herded towards some hidden destination. You try to shake off the feeling, focusing instead on finding a reliable source of information about Doomsday Book. But what if this scribe's workshop was just a red herring? What if there's something more important waiting for you in one of these winding alleys? You press on, drawn deeper into the heart of medieval London. Every step seems to reveal another enigma, another mystery that refuses to be solved. And yet, as you disappear into the thronging crowds, a hint of a smile plays on your lips. You know that there's always more to discover in this city, and sometimes it takes a little bit of digging to uncover what lies beneath the surface. The sounds and smells of medieval London swirl around you as you continue on your way. As you weave through the crowded streets, the sounds and smells of medieval London envelop you once again. The creaking of wooden signs, the clanging of blacksmiths' hammers, and the murmur of vendors calling out their wares all blend together in a cacophony that's both familiar and foreign. You've lived here long enough to know these sounds by heart, but they never fail to transport you back to this vibrant, chaotic world. You navigate through alleys and side streets, dodging market stalls and leaping over puddles of murky water. The air is thick with the smell of bread baking in ovens, roasting meat on spits, and the faint tang of salt from the nearby Thames. Your stomach growls in response to the aromas, reminding you that it's been a while since your last meal. As you make your way through the city, you begin to notice subtle changes in the architecture around you. The buildings seem taller and more ornate than they did just yesterday, or was it the day before? You can't quite put your finger on what's different, but something about the way the light catches the stone facade seems almost deliberate. You quicken your pace, curiosity piqued. Your destination is the London Guildhall, a grandiose structure that serves as both town hall and cathedral for the city. Rumor has it that the Lord Mayor himself holds court within its walls, dispensing justice to those who dare approach him with their grievances or petitions. Upon arriving at the Guildhall, you push open the heavy wooden door and step into a cool, dimly lit interior. The air inside is thick with the scent of incense and old parchment, a far cry from the noxious smells that cling to every corner of the city outside. You take in your surroundings. Rows of ornate stone columns support a vaulted ceiling above, while intricately carved wooden panels adorn the walls. As you make your way deeper into the Guildhall, you begin to notice something peculiar. Several members of the clerk's staff are gathered around a large, leather-bound tome, one that appears to be the very same Doomsday Book that's been missing for weeks. You exchange whispers with a fellow citizen who'd also caught wind of this development. What could they possibly be doing with it now? You push your way through the crowd, trying not to draw attention to yourself as you edge closer to the central gathering point. One of the clerks notices you eavesdropping and shoots you a warning glance, but another citizen leans over to whisper in your ear. It seems our Lord Mayor has received some unusual requests from His Majesty's court, this informant says, eyes darting back and forth as they speak quickly. Word is that they're seeking answers about the book itself, where it went missing, how it was recovered. Some folks are saying there's more to this disappearance than meets the eye. As you listen in on these hushed conversations, a shiver runs down your spine. You've heard whispers of dark dealings and royal conspiracies before, but nothing has ever seemed quite so oppressing. Suddenly, one of the clerks holds up a hand for silence, scanning the room as if searching for someone or something. The atmosphere becomes charged with anticipation. What will they announce next? Will the Doomsday Book's secrets be revealed, or is this merely another twist in the ongoing mystery? As you wait, your mind begins to spin theories and possibilities. Was it truly lost, or was its disappearance a clever ruse all along? What could possibly lie hidden beneath the surface of medieval London that would drive the Lord Mayor and his courtiers into such desperation? With each passing moment, the air inside the Guildhall seems to thicken, as if the very secrets being kept within these stone walls are about to spill out into the streets. The flickering torches cast shadows on the walls of the Guildhall, making it seem like the very presence of the absent treasure has grown heavier. Outside, the sound of hammering echoes through the narrow streets, as the workmen continue their laborious task of constructing new housing for the growing population. You find yourself standing in the midst of this hubbub, your feet aching from a day spent on your knees scrubbing floors at one of the smaller guild halls. The smell of fresh bread wafts through the air, enticing you to follow its source to the nearby bakery. As you pass by, you catch glimpses of apprentices kneading dough and sliding freshly baked loaves into baskets. Meanwhile, inside the larger guild hall, the Lord Mayor's advisors continue their hushed discussions. They seem utterly absorbed in their deliberations, oblivious to the din outside. It is as if they're trying to conjure up the lost treasure from thin air itself. Their whispered arguments carry on the breeze, making it impossible for you to discern what they're saying. As you make your way back to your own lodgings after a long day's work, the sun begins its descent below the rooftops of medieval London. The sky turns a deep shade of indigo, and stars start twinkling like diamonds scattered across the fabric of the universe. You take a shortcut through a narrow alleyway between two large buildings, careful not to bump into any vendors or beggars who might be huddled in the shadows. In this confined space, you're enveloped by an almost palpable sense of history. Every step you take is on top of centuries-old foundations laid down long before your time. The air is heavy with the scent of mold and dampness, which lingers after a spring shower. Your nostrils twitch as you breathe in deeply, trying to pinpoint exactly what's causing this particular aroma. It might be something spilled by one of the cooks from nearby food stalls, or maybe even the remnants of last night's ale left behind on the cobblestones. As the darkness deepens outside, your footsteps become more deliberate, each step a calculated movement through a crowded city that seems to grow denser with every passing minute. You've learned to navigate this labyrinthine world by memory and instinct alone, for it's impossible to keep track of which alleys lead where or whose lodgings are nestled in the nooks between towering structures. You duck under an awning that shelters you from a sudden downpour, your hood shielding your face from the rain. When you emerge on the other side, you notice something peculiar, a small inscription etched into the stone beneath the eaves reads, St. Paul's year 1387. The year itself is no surprise. It was a time of great rebuilding in London after the devastating fire that swept through much of the city in 1212. However, what catches your attention is not so much the date as the curious fact that St. Paul's Cathedral wasn't actually built until over 2 centuries later, and even then, its current incarnation would undergo numerous transformations before reaching its final form. What if, you begin to wonder, this inscription isn't merely an innocuous piece of medieval graffiti, but rather a cryptic message left behind by someone who knew secrets about the city that lie beyond our understanding? Your mind starts wandering through the possibilities as you approach your own modest lodgings, a small room on the top floor of a 3-story building nestled in a quieter part of town. It's been a long day, and all you really want to do is rest after scrubbing floors for most of it. But something about that inscription has piqued your interest, perhaps because its presence seems almost too deliberate not to be connected with the disappearance of the treasure at St. Paul's. Or maybe it's just another example of how London's past and present are inextricably linked, as if each layer upon which this city is built holds secrets waiting to be unearthed. You take a moment to clean your shoes on the doorstep before entering, the worn leather creaking softly beneath your feet. Inside, everything feels cozy, the small bed with its patchwork quilt, the simple wooden table for eating and working, the low ceiling that forces you to duck whenever you move around. The room is filled with the faint scent of candles used in prayers at the nearby church, a constant reminder of London's deep-seated faith. As you shed your damp cloak by the fire, the warmth from the flames dances across your skin, easing some of the fatigue accumulated over the day's activities. Your thoughts drift back to that inscription outside St. Paul's and the possible implications it might hold for understanding this enigmatic city, where past and present blur like watercolors on wet paper. But they're fleeting as you settle into bed with a worn blanket pulled up around your shoulders. Exhaustion eventually takes over. In the morning, light from the rising sun will illuminate those cobblestones once more, casting shadows that reveal nothing out of the ordinary about medieval London's most famous cathedral and its supposed lost treasure. However, for now, as you succumb to sleep amidst whispers of a city teeming with life and mystery, perhaps something hidden beneath its ancient surface is quietly stirring. The darkness closes in around you like a shroud, carrying on its breath whispers from the past that seem to cling closer than you'd care to admit. And in this state between wakefulness and slumber, the very notion of what lies concealed within those city walls seems tantalizingly close, yet forever out of reach. The silence deepens as your breathing becomes steady, a gentle rhythm punctuated by an occasional snore from someone nearby or a distant barking dog echoing through the night. In this moment of repose, London itself appears to be holding its breath in anticipation of what tomorrow might bring. As you rest, your mind begins to wander, carried by the ebb and flow of a dreamless sleep. Yet it's not long before visions begin to emerge, like wisps of fog creeping into the light of dawn. You find yourself standing within the ancient walls of St. Paul's Cathedral, its towering spire piercing the sky like a shard of splintered stone. You navigate through narrow corridors and musty chambers, your footsteps echoing off the cold stone floors. The air is thick with the scent of decay and forgotten history. As you descend into the depths of the cathedral, the atmosphere grows heavy, weighted by secrets and stories that lie hidden beneath the surface. Your journey leads you to a small, dimly lit chamber deep within the cellar. The room is cramped, its walls lined with dusty wooden beams and cobweb-shrouded tapestries. In the center of the space stands an old stone chest adorned with intricate carvings and worn by the passage of time. Curiosity piqued, you approach the chest, your fingers tracing the patterns etched into its surface. The air seems to thicken around you as if the very fabric of history is being stirred. As you lift the lid, a musty smell wafts out, carrying with it whispers from centuries past. Inside, you discover a collection of artifacts that defy explanation. Ancient scrolls yellowed by age and crackling with dry leaves, an ornate golden amulet bearing symbols long forgotten, a leather-bound book bound in what appears to be the skin of some unknown creature. Each item seems to radiate an aura of mystery, as if they are imbued with secrets waiting to be unlocked. Suddenly, visions begin to dance before your eyes like wisps of candle flame, glimpses into lives lived long ago. A young monk poring over ancient texts in this very chamber. A group of artisans gathered around a workbench crafting elaborate stone carvings for the cathedral's facade, and the stern visage of a bishop gazing out upon his flock with an air of paternal authority. As these visions fade into memory, you notice something strange. The artifacts within the chest seem to be shifting, rearranging themselves as if responding to some unseen force. It becomes clear that this was no ordinary storage container, but rather a repository for knowledge and secrets waiting to be unearthed by those with eyes to see. The archaeologists who stumbled upon this hidden chamber were met with an enigma far more complex than they could have ever imagined, a testament to the enduring power of human curiosity. As you stand there, surrounded by relics from another age, it's impossible not to wonder what other secrets lie buried beneath your feet in this great city. As London stirs back into life outside these ancient walls, you realize that even in repose, history remains ever present, whispering its tales and waiting for those willing to listen. As London stirs back into life outside these ancient walls, you realize that even in repose, history remains ever present, whispering its tales and waiting for those willing to listen. The early morning sun casts a warm glow on the cobblestone streets, illuminating the intricate patterns of lichen on the stone facades. A gentle breeze stirs the branches of the trees in Smithfield, their leaves rustling softly like a chorus of whispered secrets. As you wander through the quiet streets, your attention is drawn to a small apothecary shop tucked away between two larger buildings. The sign above the door reads Giles Remedies and features an illustration of a mortar and pestle surrounded by various herbs. You push open the creaky door and step inside, where the air is thick with the scent of dried flowers, powders, and something faintly reminiscent of decay. The apothecary himself greets you from behind the counter, a stout man with a bushy beard and spectacles perched on the end of his nose. His eyes light up as he recognizes your interest in his wares. Good morrow. Welcome to Giles Remedies. I have just what you need for any ailment that may be plaguing you. As he begins to rummage through shelves stacked with jars of dusty powders and bunches of dried herbs, your gaze falls upon a small sign posted near the window. It reads, priced according to worth, 1 penny per vial. You frown in confusion. What does this mean? Is it some sort of clever marketing ploy or an honest attempt at pricing based on the value of each item? You ask Giles about the sign, and he chuckles good-naturedly. Oh, that's just a quirk of mine, lad. You see, I believe in charging my customers according to their means. 1 penny per vial for those who can afford it, but if you're on more. Limited finances, why, I'll give you the same quality at half price. He winks knowingly and leans in closer, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. Between you and me, some folks might say this is just another way of saying pay what you can afford, but that's not quite right if you catch my drift. You purchase a small vial of powder from Giles, whose price according to the sign would be 2 pennies, half the listed value. As you leave the shop, you notice that the streets have grown slightly busier now. Peddlers and market vendors begin to set up their stalls along the way, selling everything from fresh produce to second-hand goods. As you make your way through the crowded markets, the sounds of haggling merchants and chattering pedestrians fill the air, a cacophony of raised voices and clinking coins. Amidst this chaos, one particular vendor catches your eye, an elderly woman with a wispy gray bun tied beneath her cap, selling a selection of used linens. She greets you warmly as you browse through her wares. Good morrow. Fine quality cloth here, fresh from the wash, only 3 pence per piece. Her accent is thick and rural. She's likely traveled from one of London's many surrounding villages to peddle her goods in this bustling city. You pick up a length of coarse linen with a small stain on it. I'll take this, you say, handing over the 3 pence. The vendor smiles and tucks your payment into a pouch at her belt before carefully wrapping the cloth around the stained section to conceal it from view. As you continue shopping for more essentials, including a few eggs, which cost about 4 or 5 pennies each, you start to notice that not everything is as straightforward as one might expect. Some vendors seem willing to haggle with anyone, regardless of their apparent means. Others appear determined to get the highest price possible. Eventually, after browsing through several more stalls and making a few more purchases, including some dried herbs from Giles Remedies, you find yourself back at your lodgings, a small room above a bakery near St. Paul's Cathedral. The aroma of freshly baked bread wafts up from below, mingling with the scent of last night's stew still simmering on the hearth. As you prepare for bed, your thoughts turn to the various encounters and experiences you've had throughout the day, from Giles' peculiar pricing system to the vendors in the markets. And it strikes you, what if people like Giles, who claim to charge according to their customers' worth, aren't entirely being truthful? What if, instead of genuinely assessing each person's station or means, they're simply trying to maximize their profits? Perhaps this is just a cynical view, but as you settle into your bed and listen to the sounds of London drifting outside, the creaks of wooden signs in the wind, the occasional shout from a market vendor, It seems like an entirely plausible explanation for Giles' enigmatic sign. The city slumbers on around you, its denizens either asleep or engaged in their evening routines. But as you drift off to sleep yourself, one final thought lingers at the edge of your consciousness. What if Giles wasn't just pricing according to worth? What if he was trying something even more radical? Your eyelids grow heavy. The sound of a nearby cat meowing outside on the sill begins to blur into a gentle hum. And as you succumb to sleep, it seems that history's whispers have grown quieter once again. As you drift deeper into slumber, visions of bustling streets and crowded market stalls begin to seep into your mind's eye. You find yourself standing amidst the vibrant thrum of medieval London, surrounded by people from all walks of life going about their daily routines. Your gaze falls upon a young apprentice, no more than 12 winters old, as he expertly navigates the cobblestone streets with a bucket and mop slung over his shoulder. He's tasked with cleaning the town square, where merchants hawk their wares to passers-by. The air is thick with the smells of fresh bread, roasting meats, and the acrid tang of coal smoke. As you watch, a commotion breaks out nearby. A group of townsfolk gather around a stall selling exotic spices from far-off lands, cinnamon sticks, pepper pods, and saffron threads glinting in the sunlight. The vendor's voice rises as he defends his wares against a rival merchant accusing him of adulterating his goods. A young woman with a mischievous grin sidles up to you, whispering over your shoulder about the scented waters being peddled by a group of traveling performers on the outskirts of town. They claim their potions can ward off disease and purify the air, but at an exorbitant price, she warns. Your thoughts begin to wander as the sounds of everyday life continue around you, hammering on metal from the blacksmith's shop, children playing in the distance, chasing each other through alleys, the creaking wheels of a laden cart making its way slowly down the street. You start to feel like an invisible observer floating above it all. Your attention snaps back when a figure catches your eye, a hooded woman carrying an unassuming pail and wearing a simple tunic made from rough linen. She moves with a quiet purpose through the crowds, dodging market stalls as she seeks out a specific destination. Your gaze lingers on her, intrigued by the air of secrecy surrounding her. As you continue to follow this mysterious figure, you start to notice peculiarities in the city's daily rhythms. People frequently make offerings at makeshift shrines or pray silently before crossing streets, invoking blessings from above for protection against disease and misfortune. Many homes display tokens on their doorframes, small wooden carvings of crosses, a pinch of herbs tied with thread or other talismans meant to ward off evil spirits. You pass by the great St. Paul's Cathedral, its majestic stone facade towering over the surrounding rooftops as worshippers filter in and out for morning prayers. Inside, the air is thick with incense, mingling with murmured confessions and whispered petitions to a higher power. Outside, scribes huddle beside large scrolls of parchment, taking down accounts from visiting merchants or town officials. Your mind begins to absorb these vignettes as you become more immersed in this vibrant tapestry, people going about their daily business without fanfare, yet still managing to create an intricate web of relationships and routines that support the city's lifeblood. Your own thoughts grow foggy once more as sleep starts to reclaim its hold. As your eyelids droop further, fragments from these scenes scatter through your mind like autumn leaves on a gusty wind, the apprentice's mop swishing across wet cobblestones, the rival merchant's scowl deepening as he disputes with his competitor over tainted spices, and that hooded woman always watching yet unseen. The street lamps of London's narrow alleys cast long shadows on the cobblestones, their flickering flames a soothing accompaniment to the evening air. You are standing in one such alleyway, surrounded by timber-framed buildings that seem to lean inward, as if sharing secrets. The smell of roasting meets wafts from nearby vendors, but it's not enough to mask the pungent stench of human waste and rotting garbage that clings to every surface like a damp shroud. You breathe in deeply, trying to pinpoint the source of this overwhelming odor. It's as if the very fabric of London itself is perpetually unwashed, its pores clogged with the detritus of daily life. The stench clings to your skin, making you feel gritty and unclean, even after a wash with cold water from the nearby well. Look down at your feet, where a small puddle of stagnant water reflects the flickering light above. A discarded wooden spoon lies half submerged in its depths, a testament to the countless meals that have been eaten on these very streets. You can almost hear the sound of spoons clinking against bowls, the murmur of hushed conversations, and the occasional shout from a market vendor trying to hawk their wares. Your gaze drifts upward toward the wooden signs creaking in the gentle breeze. The Golden Griffin, Mabel's Meat Pies, and Giles' Fresh Fish. These humble businesses, some little more than converted attics or cramped backrooms, serve as gathering places for Londoners from all walks of life. You notice a group of apprentices gathered outside one such sign, laughing and joking as they share a pot of ale. The air is heavy with the scent of roasting bread from the nearby oven, its sweet aroma momentarily overpowering the stench of waste and garbage. But even this respite is fleeting, for beneath it lies another layer, that of sweat-drenched woolens and damp leather, the smells of human bodies living in close proximity. As you continue down the alleyway, you notice a small wooden bucket suspended from a rusty hook on one building's wall. It's overflowing with what appears to be rotting vegetables. Carrots, onions, and cabbage, leaves all tangled together like a gruesome tapestry. Beneath it lies a scattered mess of discarded vegetable scraps, a carrot top here, an onion skin there. Someone, or perhaps several someones, have used this spot as a makeshift garbage heap. Your eyes follow the line of wooden buckets hanging from hooks along the alleyway's walls, each one filled to bursting with its own particular brand of refuse. You notice that they're not evenly spaced. Instead, they seem to be concentrated around specific points, near doorways, outside market stalls, and at the entrances to narrow passageways. This irregular placement is no accident. In medieval London, waste management, or rather the lack thereof, was a peculiarly organized system. Garbage collectors known as cabbage boys would collect refuse from these wooden buckets, carrying it on their shoulders in large baskets slung over their arms. But it's not as if they simply took this garbage away. No, the contents of those buckets were often reburied beneath nearby streets, or worse still, dumped into the River Thames itself. You recall a sign outside St. Marylebone Church. By order of King Edward III, all garbage must be buried within city limits. Yet here you are, standing amidst this sea of rotting garbage and human waste, wondering which particular decree governs this street's collection schedule. It's getting dark now. The sky is a deep shade of indigo above the rooftops. Flickering torches cast eerie shadows on nearby walls as evening falls over London. As you continue down the alleyway, you notice that even the smallest gestures of daily life are affected by these smells and sights. A mother hastily covering her child's face with a cloth, an elderly man discreetly adjusting his hood to avoid eye contact. You can almost hear the distant sound of church bells tolling, another reminder that this is a city both beautiful and rotten, where grandeur and decay coexist like opposing tides. And as you breathe in deeply once more, trying to separate the competing scents, you begin to realize just how impossible it would be for medieval Londoners to fully scrub away these smells. In fact, there's an almost mythological quality to their persistence, a testament to the city's perpetual struggle between cleanliness and decay. As you wander deeper into this labyrinthine world of narrow alleys and cramped buildings, you start to sense that the very fabric of daily life is tied inextricably to these smells. The pungent tang of human waste, the sweet reek of roasting bread, and ever present, like a perpetual shadow, the overpowering stench of rotting garbage. Now, as night begins its slow descent over London's rooftops, you can almost feel those sounds from earlier scenes beginning to fade into memory. The screech of wheels on cobblestones, the chatter of pedestrians in Market Square, and that hooded woman watching from afar, always unseen. As night deepens, the city's rhythm shifts from one of activity to one of dormancy. The streets that were once throngs with people now empty out, save for the occasional stray cat or dog scrounging for scraps in alleys. But amidst this quiet, a new reality emerges, one that is as pungent as it is overwhelming. The smell hits you first, a noxious miasma of rot and decay that clings to every surface like a bad omen. It's the stench of garbage left uncollected for days on end, fermenting in the summer heat until its very essence turns toxic. People with sensitive noses cover their faces with cloths or handkerchiefs, but even they can't escape the acrid tang. London's waste management system is woefully inadequate, a fact that becomes more apparent as night wears on and darkness hides all manner of filth from view. Human excrement mixes freely with rotting vegetables, spoiled meat, and every imaginable kind of detritus in narrow alleys and cramped courtyards. Piles of garbage grow, unchecked by the city's meager resources. To make matters worse, water, precious as it is, often finds its way into this putrid stew. Ditches overflow with rainwater that carries away waste only to deposit it elsewhere, creating a never-ending cycle of contamination. The streets themselves become conduits for disease and suffering. Rat-borne illnesses thrive in these conditions, spreading quickly through the city's close-packed population. People who live on London streets, the majority of its inhabitants, are most directly affected by this plague of garbage and waste. They must navigate narrow alleys to find work or food, often with no other choice but to step over rotting piles or breathe in the miasma that clings to every surface like a bad omen. For those who can afford it, homes behind thick stone walls or high timber frames offer some respite from this stench. Wealthy merchants and traders live at a remove from the city's squalor, able to pay for better conditions, cleaner streets, and more skilled servants to tend their households. Even so, rumors of disease spreading through contaminated water supplies keep them on edge. Middle-class citizens like butchers' wives or candle makers occupy an uneasy middle ground. While they may not live in the filthiest parts of town, neither do they have means enough to escape entirely. They know all too well that their lives are bound up with those of poorer folk, connected through markets and trade routes where every transaction carries a risk. The poor themselves form a vast underclass who seem invisible by day, but become apparent at night when they emerge from hidden doorways or climb over rooftops to forage in the shadows. These people live hand to mouth, eking out meager existence on scraps gathered after dark, often with no choice but to scrounge through garbage itself. For all these Londoners, there's an unspoken understanding that some degree of squalor is simply part of life within the city walls. No one expects perfection, yet hope for better lives continues as a persistent rumble beneath their daily struggles. As night wears on and moonlight casts long shadows across rooftops, it becomes clear how this disease-ridden reality undercuts everything. Even basic human dignity seems lost when streets reek of rotting garbage and decaying flesh. No wonder hooded figures lurk at the fringes, watching with a knowing gaze as people succumb to illness or despair. Perhaps there's something worse yet. Amidst London's mire, an unspoken fear takes hold that no matter how much you may try to escape it, this stench and its attendant suffering will forever be tied to who you are. The last wisps of sunlight seep through the narrow windows of the Abbey Gatehouse kitchen, casting long shadows on the stone floor. You stand amidst the quiet bustle, watching as Sister Margaret carefully arranges a dish of steaming eel in front of a hungry pilgrim. The air is thick with the scent of roasting meat and fresh bread wafting from the ovens. As you breathe in deeply, your nose twitches at the faint tang of decay carried on the gentle breeze that stirs through the courtyard outside. It's a reminder that even as the Abbey strives to provide comfort and solace for those seeking refuge here, there exists an unspoken undercurrent, one tied not just to the physical environment but also to the people themselves. In this moment, as Sister Margaret serves another pilgrim with a smile and a kind word, you can't help but wonder, what if, despite all efforts to clean and scrub away at it, that lingering stench remains an inherent part of life in medieval London? What if it's not just about the city's grime and refuse, but also, perhaps above all else, its people? You glance around at the pilgrims huddled over their meals. Some are young and full of hope. Others wear lines of exhaustion etched into their faces, as if they've been walking for years under a relentless rain that never seems to let up. A few gaze out into space with an air of detached sorrow. Sister Margaret approaches you now, bearing a tray laden with small portions of bread, cheese, and ale. She pauses beside one of the pilgrims, who looks as though he hasn't eaten in days. "Ah," she says gently, "you must be famished. Let me help." As Sister Margaret serves this particular pilgrim, you notice something peculiar, an almost imperceptible pause between her smile and the hand that extends with his food. A tiny hesitation that doesn't last a full heartbeat but is long enough to suggest, perhaps only to yourself, some deeper understanding. You watch as Sister Margaret's expression softens further. In this quiet moment, it seems she might be thinking of something other than just providing sustenance for the weary traveler. Maybe not even anything connected directly to him at all, though your mind insists on making connections between the faint flicker of sadness and her actions. Just then, a soft clinking echoes from outside as Brother William, another member of the Abbey's serving staff, carefully places more candles around the courtyard fire pit. The flames cast shadows on nearby stone walls, creating an intimate glow that seems to envelop everyone within its reach, including yourself, though you're not sure if it's just a trick of your imagination. In this tranquil atmosphere, where even the softest sounds seem amplified by stillness, Sister Margaret carries her tray back into the kitchen. As she does so, one candle near the fire pit flickers and dies, plunging that corner of the courtyard into partial darkness for an instant before Brother William swiftly replaces it with a new one. The resulting light is warm but uneven, not unlike the emotions people here must experience when coming to this place seeking solace. It reminds you that sometimes even the most basic things can be both mundane and extraordinary, especially in environments where contrasts are ever present and often at odds. Dark and light, comfort and hardship, stench and perfume. You wander over to Brother William now, who's busily ensuring each candle is positioned just so around the fire. As you draw closer, he looks up with a gentle smile, not one of amusement or pleasure, but something more akin to acceptance, perhaps even compassion for all that exists within these city walls. He speaks softly as he works. We've had some lively discussions amongst ourselves about our role here at the Abbey Gatehouse. It's easy to lose sight of what we truly offer, especially when faced with so many problems. He pauses, glancing around cautiously before continuing in a lower tone still. You know it's not just food and shelter people need, they also require kindness, understanding, and sometimes even forgiveness. As he speaks these final words, the candles nearby seem to cast their shadows like tiny confessions on the surrounding walls, almost as if acknowledging some deeper reality that cannot be ignored. You feel a subtle shift within yourself. It's not about what lies outside, but rather how you respond to its challenges. Without thinking too much more on this now, you find yourself drawn back into the kitchen, where Sister Margaret is carefully serving another meal alongside her colleagues. Brother William still standing nearby with his candles, quietly watching over them all as they work. As you enter the kitchen, the savory aromas and clinking pots transport you back to a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos that has been brewing outside the abbey walls. Sister Margaret notices your presence and offers a warm smile as she ladles steaming vegetables onto Brother William's trencher. The brothers' gentle murmurs and occasional laughter weave together with the sizzling meat on the hearth, creating a soothing melody that seems to counteract the unease that has been growing within you since the earlier events. You take a seat at an empty table near the fire, grateful for the opportunity to rest and collect your thoughts. Sister Margaret approaches you, carrying a steaming bowl of soup made from a rich broth flavored with fresh herbs from their gardens. "Eat well, brother," she says, her eyes filled with kindness as she sets down the bowl in front of you. You nod in appreciation, feeling a sense of gratitude towards these simple acts of care and compassion. As Brother William continues to watch over them all, he begins to quietly chant prayers under his breath, the soft cadence blending with the kitchen's gentle hum. Sister Margaret glances at him occasionally, a look of admiration on her face as she tends to the meal preparations. The air is filled with an atmosphere of mutual respect and trust among these individuals who have dedicated their lives to serving others. The door to the kitchen creaks open, admitting Brother Edwin, one of the younger monks responsible for maintaining the abbey's stores. He exchanges quiet greetings with Sister Margaret before noticing you sitting by yourself at a nearby table. "Brother, I see you're taking your meal early," he says with a gentle smile as he joins you. The day ahead promises to be filled with challenges. You glance up from your soup, observing the gravity in his eyes. Indeed, Brother Edwin's words bring back memories of earlier this morning, when the prior spoke of increased unrest among some residents within London's city walls. Rumors have been circulating about tensions between factions vying for power, and those who dwell near the Abbey, an essential hub connecting different sections of the city, are growing increasingly concerned. As you ponder these thoughts, Brother Edwin begins to share a tale from his own time at the scriptorium earlier that morning, recounting an incident involving a particularly unruly group attempting to breach its defenses. His account reveals a more nuanced understanding behind recent events in London's governance and trade politics, complexities not immediately apparent beneath surface tension. Intrigued by this new perspective, you find yourself questioning whether what initially appeared as separate issues are actually connected on deeper levels than previously realized. This realization sparks an urge within to engage with these larger societal challenges more actively, but also leaves you uncertain about how your small actions might contribute in a meaningful way against the backdrop of such vast forces at play. While pondering this inner turmoil, Sister Margaret arrives beside you once again, bearing another serving platter filled with fresh bread and meat pies. This time she is joined by Brother Thomas from the garden courtyard, who has been quietly observing your conversation with keen interest. Brother Edwin, he says in a low voice as if sharing an afterthought, perhaps it's not merely about those outside our walls that we should be concerned, but also how we respond within them. As Brother Edwin's words hung in the air like a gentle morning mist, Thomas's eyes seemed to cloud over with a mixture of introspection and concern. He nodded slowly, his gaze drifting towards the imposing stone walls that surrounded them, as if searching for some hidden truth or weakness within their ancient stonework. "Ah, Brother Edwin," he said finally, his voice measured but laced with an undercurrent of urgency, "I fear you may be right. We've been so focused on tending to the needs of our guests and the poor who come seeking refuge that we've neglected a more pressing concern, ourselves." Thomas's words were like a gentle breeze rustling the leaves of a nearby hedge, soothing yet unsettling at the same time. Brother Edwin felt his grip on the wooden staff in his hand tighten as he listened intently to Thomas's reflection. As they spoke, the soft glow of sunset began to seep into the courtyard, casting long shadows across the flagstones and illuminating the faces of those gathered around them. The air was alive with the scent of roasting meats wafting from the nearby kitchen, mingling with the rich aroma of fresh bread baking in the adjacent oven. Their conversation drew the attention of Brother Michael, one of the senior monks who had been watching their discussion with growing interest. He approached cautiously, his eyes darting towards Thomas as if seeking guidance on how to intervene or join the conversation. As he arrived at the edge of the group, a faint look of discomfort crossed Brother Edwin's face, perhaps it being drawn into this private exchange or possibly due to some unspoken understanding between himself and Thomas that had been shared in silence. Whatever the reason, his gaze flickered briefly towards Brother Michael before returning to Thomas. The air seemed heavy with anticipation as Thomas paused, collecting his thoughts before continuing. "Brother Edwin's words struck a chord within me," he said slowly, "for I fear we've grown complacent, even hardened by our years of isolation and duty." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Brother Michael felt an inexplicable sense of unease creeping over him. He exchanged a hesitant glance with one of his fellow monks before clearing his throat softly to announce his presence. "Forgive me, Thomas," he said gently, "but perhaps we might consider sharing your thoughts in a more formal manner. The brothers are due for their evening prayers soon." Thomas's gaze flickered towards Brother Michael, and for an instant it seemed as though the two monks were communicating silently, exchanging secrets or messages that only they could understand. Whatever passed between them remained hidden behind expressions of quiet respect. The sound of laughter drifted from the nearby kitchen, where Sister Agnes was busy preparing dinner with a group of younger novices under her watchful eye. The joyous atmosphere seemed at odds with the more serious tone of Thomas's words, yet somehow it served as a poignant reminder that even in times of crisis or introspection, there is always room for levity and connection. As Brother Edwin turned to address Brother Michael directly, his eyes took on an air of quiet conviction, one that spoke volumes about the trials he had faced within these very walls. "We are not merely guardians of this place," he said softly, "but custodians of its soul." The words hung in the stillness like a whispered promise or unspoken truth, drawing all present into their contemplation as Brother Michael nodded thoughtfully, acknowledging both the weight and wisdom behind Edwin's assertion. As night began to fall over the abbey grounds, Thomas stepped forward once more, his eyes scanning the faces gathered around him. "Tonight," he announced quietly but firmly, "we gather for our last meal at the gatehouse before its new purpose is revealed." A hush fell across the courtyard as Brother Edwin's words echoed in their minds, a reminder that change and renewal are an integral part of life within these ancient walls. The air vibrated with anticipation as Thomas led them towards the nearby kitchen, where Sister Agnes had prepared a feast to rival any served at the grand halls of London. Laughter and conversation mingled as they took their seats around the long wooden table, a celebration that would be remembered for years to come in this place, where tradition and innovation coexisted. As Brother Edwin lifted his gaze towards Thomas, he sensed an unspoken bond between them, forged by shared struggles, late-night vigils, and moments of quiet reflection within these sacred walls. A connection so deep-seated it seemed woven into the very fabric of their existence, one that would carry them through trials to come as they navigated a future uncertain in its contours but filled with promise. In this instant, Brother Edwin realized that Thomas had been quietly observing not only him and his thoughts, but also those around them. He understood now that their leader's words were not merely an expression of introspection, but a testament to the resilience, even vulnerability, of those who called these walls home. As you wander through the narrow streets of medieval London, your footsteps echoing off the half-timbered buildings, you can't help but notice a faint scent wafting from Threadneedle Street. It's not quite morning yet, the sun hasn't fully risen over the rooftops, and the air is still heavy with the remnants of last night's revelry. You follow your nose to a small alleyway where a group of apprentices are busy scrubbing down the cobblestones. One of them, a lanky youth named Thomas, looks up as you approach. He wipes his forehead on his sleeve, leaving a streak of grime across his skin. "Good morrow," he says with a nod, though his eyes betray a hint of suspicion, not unkindly, just habituated to strangers. You notice the apprentices are working in near silence, their scrubbing motions almost meditative as they focus on removing the stains from last night's excesses. The only sound is the occasional clinking of pails and the soft screech of a nearby cat chasing after its own tail. You watch for a moment before turning your attention to the nearby shops. A sign creaks in the gentle morning breeze above a bakery on Threadneedle Street, bearing an image of a baker's daughter surrounded by wheat stalks. The aroma of fresh bread wafts out into the street, mingling with the scent from the alleyway. You can almost taste the warm sweetness as you pass by. Behind the bakery stands a large stone building that appears to be some sort of storehouse or warehouse. Its wooden doors are adorned with an intricate lock and iron hinges in the shape of griffins' heads. A small inscription above the door reads, Cocking's Warehouses in faded letters. You wonder what kind of goods would warrant such elaborate security. As you stand there lost in thought, a passing merchant greets Thomas with a nod and some coin to share among the apprentices for their morning bread. The young man breaks into a wide smile as he tucks the coins away. Ah, now we can have something decent instead of that stale stuff from the Lord's pantry. The mention of the Lord's pantry brings you back to your own errand, which is what exactly? You recall having heard rumors about an abandoned site nearby, possibly connected with a mysterious burial in Threadneedle Street. You make your way toward the city records office on Paternoster Row. The sign above the door reads Guildhall of St. Mary le Bow, and inside you find yourself standing amidst rows of dusty parchment rolls tied together with strips of worn leather. Scribes' tables are scattered throughout the room, their quills scratching against vellum as they record transactions and accounts for merchants and traders. You spot a lone clerk hunched over his work, eyes scanning lines of cursive script. He looks up as you approach, squinting slightly behind a pair of thick spectacles perched on the end of his nose. "How may I assist you?" he asks with an air of distracted courtesy. As you begin to ask about potential records related to Threadneedle Street, the clerk's expression becomes increasingly perplexed. He scratches at a nearby quill, pausing mid-sentence before speaking. "Ah, yes, well, it seems there was indeed some sort of burial on that street." He glances down at his papers and leans forward slightly. There is an entry from 1327 mentioning the unmarked grave in Threadneedle Street. Nothing more specific than that. It's as if they were trying to erase it entirely. He looks up, raising an eyebrow. You sense a mixture of curiosity and trepidation emanating from him, like he's not quite sure how much is safe to say. "Nowadays," he continues softly, "some folks reckon the burial might have been for one of those who perished in the great fire that swept through here some years ago." He leans back in his chair now, eyes scanning your face with a hint of concern, perhaps at having shared more than intended. The room falls quiet as the scribes around you seem to grow attentive to their work once again. The clerk glances down at his papers one last time before adding softly, "But I must confess, the entry for 1327 seems genuine, and that unmarked grave would have been a rare occurrence, not something they'd usually bother recording." As the morning sun continues its ascent over London's rooftops, you take in the sounds of everyday life outside the Guildhall. The murmur of pedestrians grows louder as people begin their day. Hawkers cry out to passers-by with promises of fresh produce and other goods. You recall your own curiosity about that forgotten burial, the unmarked grave on Threadneedle Street. A small, gnawing doubt creeps into your thoughts. What if this entry is genuine? What might it reveal about life in medieval London? The gentle morning breeze stirs up dust motes dancing near the windows as you ponder the clerk's words and your own discoveries so far. It seems there are more questions than answers, for now at least. With a quiet sigh, the scribe's scratching on parchment becomes almost soothing background noise as you make your way back out into Threadneedle Street. You notice Thomas from earlier is still scrubbing away in the alleyway. He catches your eye and offers a friendly wave before returning to his task. As you continue walking through London's streets, with its winding alleys, bustling marketplaces, and the faint scent of wood smoke carried on the breeze, you can't help but wonder what other secrets might be hidden just beneath the surface. As you stroll along Cheapside, taking in the vibrant sights and sounds of medieval London, a gentle hum fills your ears, the murmur of merchants hawking their wares, the clanging of pots from nearby kitchens, and the distant tolling of bells signaling the hour. The scent of freshly baked bread wafts through the air, making your stomach growl with hunger. You continue northward on Cheapside, passing beneath the imposing shadow of St. Paul's Cathedral, its stone facade a testament to the city's enduring grandeur. As you navigate the crowded streets, you find yourself drawn into a bustling marketplace. Stallholders vie for attention, displaying their goods in an array of colorful fabrics and wares, silks from Italy, woolens from Flanders, and intricately carved wooden boxes. Your gaze drifts to the left, where a small group of apprentices are gathered around a stall selling exotic spices and perfumes. One young man, his face smeared with sweat, is enthusiastically demonstrating the virtues of a particularly pungent blend of herbs. His words are met with laughter from the crowd, who seem more interested in sampling the aromas than taking serious note of the salesman's claims. As you pause to watch this commotion, your attention is caught by an elderly woman making her way through the throng. She moves slowly but purposefully, a small basket slung over one arm and a wispy shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Her eyes, set deep in their creased face, gleam with a knowing light as she navigates the crowded space. She pauses beside you, surveying the market stalls before fixing you with an intense gaze. "Lost love?" she asks gruffly, her voice tinged with kindness despite its rough exterior. You shake your head and she nods approvingly. "I thought so. My name is Alice, by the way. I've been selling my wares here for nigh on 30 years." Alice leads you through a maze of alleys, pointing out hidden landmarks. This narrow passageway was once used as an escape route from the nearby castle. That ancient stone carving over there depicts a forgotten king's family crest. And behind that pile of discarded straw lies a network of tunnels and sewers only recently unearthed. As you walk with Alice, she regales you with tales of life in medieval London, stories of famine and pestilence, times when the city's streets ran red with blood and its inhabitants faced unimaginable hardship. Your conversation is interrupted by a shout from one of the stalls nearby. "Make way for Master John." A portly figure emerges into view, his doublet gleaming with an ornate brooch at the throat. He carries himself proudly, surveying the market as if he owns it, which in truth may not be far from the mark. "Ah, look who's here," Alice whispers beside you, her voice dripping with amusement. "The Lord Mayor of London has come to do a bit of shopping among his subjects." You watch as Master John pauses at each stall, making grand gestures and speaking loudly about matters both local and global, taxes on wool exports, alliances with the city of Flanders, or some such other weighty issue. It's clear that Alice holds little regard for the Lord Mayor. He thinks himself a great leader, she murmurs, her tone tinged with disdain, but what does he truly know of our city? The people who live here, we are his true subjects. Your walk continues on this winding path through London's crowded streets as you try to absorb all there is to see. As night begins to fall, casting a deep blue shadow over the city, Alice gestures towards an imposing stone building nearby. That be St. Nicholas Shambles, our local church. A grand place of worship for those in need. She glances around cautiously before continuing under her breath. Though some say it's cursed, you raise your eyebrows at this sudden turn in conversation. What secret might Alice allude to? The Lord Mayor has long maintained that the city is a beacon of order and prosperity, yet tales such as these whispers about hidden tunnels, unexplained occurrences in St. Nicholas Shambles hint at deeper mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Alice shoots you a knowing glance before hurrying off into the gathering darkness. Mind where you tread, she says over her shoulder, leaving you pondering the enigmatic statement and wondering what other secrets this medieval city might hold. You continue down the narrow alleyway, your footsteps echoing off the stone walls as you make your way through the winding streets of medieval London. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the cobblestones and illuminating the faint wisps of smoke curling from the chimneys above. As you walk, the sound of gentle chanting carries on the breeze, a soft murmur that seems to emanate from the nearby church of St. Martin le Grand. You slow your pace, drawn in by the soothing melody, but it's not until you push open the heavy wooden door and step inside that the true source of the sound reveals itself. The church is dimly lit, with only a few candles flickering to light the space. The air is thick with incense, which hangs heavy on your skin as you breathe in deeply. You notice an elderly monk standing at the altar, his eyes closed and hands clasped together as he recites the evening prayers. As you take a seat near the back of the church, the soft chanting begins to fade away, replaced by the gentle clinking of small bells from the nearby chapel. The sound is so familiar that it's almost comforting, like the beat of a heartbeat in the distance. You glance around the dimly lit space, noticing a few other patrons scattered throughout the pews. A young couple sits together near the front, their hands clasped tightly as they listen to the prayers. Further back, an elderly woman kneels on her prayer mat, her eyes fixed intently on some invisible point in the distance. The air is filled with the scent of old wood and candle wax, a pungent smell that's both familiar and comforting after so many years of living alongside it. You take a deep breath, letting the musty aroma fill your lungs as you settle into the quiet rhythm of the prayers. As the service draws to a close, the elderly monk steps forward once more, his eyes opening slowly as he surveys the small congregation gathered before him. He pauses for a moment, his gaze sweeping across the space before coming to rest on some distant point beyond the church walls. You follow his gaze, trying to discern what it is that's caught his attention. But there's nothing, just the fading light of day and the soft hum of evening traffic from the nearby streets. The monk's eyes linger for a moment longer before dropping back down to his hands, where he stands with an air of quiet contemplation. As you rise to your feet along with the rest of the congregation, you notice something peculiar on the wall near the entrance. A small inscription that catches your eye as the light from the candles casts its shadows across the stone. It reads Tempus Fugit or Time Flees. You're not quite sure what to make of it at first, whether it's some sort of clever phrase or just an obscure piece of Latin jargon. But there's something about the way the words seem to resonate with your own thoughts on this quiet, peaceful evening that catches your attention. You find yourself pondering the inscription as you step back out into the cool evening air, wondering what exactly it means for time to flee, and how one might measure its passing in a city where clocks are scarce and hours blend together like the shadows on the walls. The sound of distant hammers ringing from the nearby blacksmith's shop carries through the night, punctuated by the occasional shout or laughter as the apprentices work late into the evening. As you make your way back out onto the streets, you notice a small crowd gathered near the base of St. Paul's Cathedral, drawn in by some commotion that seems to have erupted nearby. A young apprentice stands at the center of it all, his hands waving wildly as he tries to restore order amidst the chaos. You push through the throng, curiosity getting the better of you as you try to discern what exactly is happening. But before you can reach the front of the crowd, a figure steps forward from the shadows, an elderly woman with a determined look in her eye and a stern expression on her face. "What's all this commotion?" she demands, her voice carrying over the din of the crowd like a whip cracking through still air. The young apprentice looks up at her sheepishly before mumbling something about the water clock not being right, that it seems to have stopped working entirely in the middle of the day. You glance around, trying to follow his gaze as he points out towards some nearby structure where you spot a small wooden dial set into the stone wall. The face of the clock is blank and unyielding, like a cold, unforgiving mask that refuses to yield any secrets. The elderly woman's expression darkens further at this news, her eyes narrowing as she regards the stopped clock with an air of disapproval. "It seems we've lost our timing," she mutters under her breath before turning back towards you. "I suppose it's up to someone else now. Perhaps a young apprentice like yourself might have some idea what to do next." You glance down at your hands, feeling the familiar weight of the clockwork mechanism in your pocket, as you realize just how much responsibility has been thrust upon you. The sound of distant chimes carries through the night air once more, this time from the nearby Westminster Abbey, a gentle reminder that even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, there's still some small measure of order to be found. You glance up at the stopped clock, feeling your mind begin to wander as you ponder the intricacies of its mechanism. The sounds around you grow quieter once more, replaced by the soft hum of evening air that seems to vibrate through every cell in your body like a gentle pulse, reminding you that even amidst all this uncertainty and confusion, there's still some small measure of peace to be found. As you stand there lost in thought, the elderly woman steps forward once more, her eyes glinting with a hint of amusement as she regards you. "Don't worry," she says finally, her voice softening into something almost like kindness. "I'm sure someone will figure out how to fix it soon enough." You glance over at her, trying to discern what exactly is driving this air of quiet confidence that seems to emanate from her very presence. But before you can ask any questions or press for further details, she's turned away and vanished into the crowd, leaving you alone once more with your thoughts. The stopped clock looms above you like some cold, unforgiving monument, a reminder that even in this quiet moment of evening calm, there are still so many mysteries waiting to be unraveled. As you stand there lost in thought, The stillness of the evening air is punctuated only by the distant clangs and shouts from the city's markets, slowly winding down for the night. The stopped clock above seems to loom even larger now, its dark face a constant reminder that time waits for no man, not even those seeking solace in the quiet hours. You glance around, taking in the familiar sights of your neighborhood. The alleyways are narrow and winding, their stone walls worn smooth by centuries of use. Lanterns cast flickering shadows on the ground as you make your way through the crowded streets. People hurry past, some muttering to themselves or carrying bundles under their arms. As a merchant's apprentice, you're accustomed to the sights and sounds of daily life in London. Yet tonight feels different. Perhaps it's the stillness after the day's bustle that unsettles you. You've heard whispers about strange happenings in the city. Some claim to have seen shadowy figures lurking around the river at night, while others speak of disembodied voices echoing through the streets. You shake your head, dismissing such tales as mere fantasy. There are far more pressing concerns on your mind, like the state of your master's ledger or whether you'll be able to afford a new set of gloves for winter. Still, the air seems heavy with an undercurrent of unease. The sound of footsteps echoes through the alleyway ahead, growing louder until a figure emerges from the shadows. It's your fellow apprentice Thomas, who works in the same shop as you. He looks agitated, his usual lopsided grin absent as he approaches. "What are you doing out here so late?" you ask, curiosity getting the better of you. Thomas hesitates before speaking in a hushed tone. "I was walking home from the market and saw something peculiar, one of those water clocks at St. Paul's Cathedral had its hands moving again." You exchange an amused glance with Thomas. Water clocks were infamous for their quirks, often breaking or getting stuck mid-cycle without warning. "Perhaps it's just a temporary fix," you suggest. "One of the monks must have tinkered with it after hours." Thomas shakes his head. "No, I'm telling you, its hands moved like clockwork. And not just that, the water was flowing too. As if time itself had come unstuck for an instant." You snort in derision, but Thomas's expression remains serious. "It gets stranger," he continues. "As I watched, a figure appeared beside it, tall and gaunt with eyes like two glittering stars. They spoke to the clock, their voice barely above a whisper. Something about realigning its gears." You raise an eyebrow at this, your amusement faltering. "What are you saying?" you ask gently. "That someone's been messing around with our water clocks." Thomas leans in closer, his breath misting on the evening air as he speaks. "I'm saying that perhaps there's more to these whispers and odd happenings than we think. Something waiting just beneath the surface of this city." The stopped clock above seems to grow even darker now, its presence oppressive as you ponder Thomas's words. You exchange a look with your friend. It's clear neither of you is ready to dismiss such tales so easily. The dim light within the scriptorium casts long shadows across the faces of the scribes huddled over their workbenches. You take a sip from your flask, feeling the cool liquid soothe your parched throat as you continue to pore over the yellowed pages of the Liber Niger. The faint scent of parchment and candle wax wafts through the air, mingling with the smell of fresh ink and the distant tang of wood smoke drifting in from outside. Your eyes scan the text, trying to make sense of the scribbled notes and annotations scattered throughout. As you study a particularly worn page, your gaze catches on an empty section. Several pages seem to be missing altogether, their presence indicated only by faint stubs and broken threads where they once bound the book together. A small notation in the margin hints at some sort of controversy surrounding these lost sections. Volumina qui decesserunt, the volumes that have departed. You exchange a look with your friend huddled across from you, both of you sharing an unspoken skepticism about the notion that entire pages could vanish without a word. You lean back in your stool, eyes drifting towards Brother Edwin, who sits at the far end of the room, poring over his own manuscript with an air of quiet absorption. Brother Edwin's focus is so intense it borders on absent-minded. He doesn't seem to notice when you get up and walk over to him. You clear your throat softly in attempt to rouse him from his reverie, a habit developed through years spent studying side by side, sharing whispered observations about the intricacies of illuminated lettering. Brother Edwin, you say gently, trying not to disturb the stillness within which he seems to exist. He blinks slowly, as if emerging from some deep contemplation. Yes. You hold up a finger towards one of his manuscript pages and indicate the missing sections in Liber Niger. His eyes flick between your pointing hand and the text on his own page before settling back onto yours with an expression of mild curiosity. Those lost pages. Perhaps they were damaged beyond repair, he suggests, running a thumb over the edge of his scriptorium cap. Or possibly, as some speculate, they contained information deemed too sensitive for common eyes. You frown thoughtfully at this, weighing Brother Edwin's words against your own recollection of how often manuscripts are lost in London during times of turmoil, or when rival factions vie for power within the church. Your mind wanders back to that day last autumn, watching a group of monks carefully disassembling and rebinding an ancient text, their efforts seemingly driven by some cryptic directive from above. Discrepancies like this are bound to arise, Brother Edwin adds after a moment's contemplation. The Liber Niger is but one piece within the vast tapestry. Threads can be misaligned, even when all evidence points towards its authenticity. You let his metaphor hang for a moment before turning back to your own workbench, where you find that your friend has been quietly scribbling notes alongside yours. The scribe's hand moves swiftly across parchment as he transcribes another passage from Liber Niger, leaving faint scratch marks in the margins. Your eyes fall upon an adjacent stack of parchments containing rough drafts and half-finished sketches for illuminated lettering, bearing Brother Edwin's name at their topmost edge in a sprawling script. As your gaze roams over these imperfect pages, adorned with hastily drawn fleur-de-lis and interlacing vines, you begin to feel that peculiar sensation when something resonates within the quiet depths of your mind. You've seen similar drafts on previous visits, but never quite so scattered or disorganized as this time. Each sheet bears tiny scribbles in Brother Edwin's own hand, reminders for himself about which color of ink suits a particular passage, or how to balance contrasting shades without overpowering the text. A faint breeze stirs outside, causing creaks and groans throughout the building. Its gentle sigh blends with the hushed conversations carried on by fellow scribes in the same room. The flickering candlelight dances across Brother Edwin's manuscript as he pauses in his work to adjust a stubborn quill tip, leaving behind tiny ink smudges like miniature fossils. Your brother's writing can be quite expressive. Your friend observes quietly, eyes scanning over another one of Brother Edwin's drafts for similarities with Liber Niger. I notice how often the hand that writes these lines is more fluid than his own script. Does he have a second, even perhaps a third? A helper. You frown in confusion before turning back to face your friend, who seems so engrossed by this theory they've forgotten about the initial subject of discussion, those missing pages from Liber Niger. As you lean forward, exchanging whispers with Brother Edwin once more regarding these errant sections and their possible significance within London's scriptural world. As you lean forward, exchanging whispers with Brother Edwin once more regarding these errant sections and their possible significance within London's scriptural world, a sudden commotion breaks out in the corner of the room. The monk tasked with maintaining the scriptorium's library, Brother Timothy, rushes over to your table, his brow furrowed with concern. "Forgive me, esteemed scholars," he says, addressing you and Brother Edwin directly, "but it seems we've had a bit of a misunderstanding, shall we say. One of our junior monks has been searching for those missing pages from Liber Niger, and I'm afraid they may have stumbled upon something rather unexpected." The room falls silent as the weight of his words hangs in the air. Brother Edwin's eyes light up with intrigue, while you feel a shiver run down your spine. "Tell us more," you press on, sensing that this development might be more than just a trivial matter. Brother Timothy glances around nervously before leaning in closer to whisper. "It appears one of our younger monks, Brother Thomas, discovered an alternate manuscript within the library's storage. It's an older copy of Liber Niger with the same text and illustrations as the original, but, and this is what has everyone so abuzz, it contains all the missing pages." A collective gasp echoes through the room, followed by hushed murmurs and speculative whispers among the scholars present. "Preposterous," Brother Edwin exclaims. "How could such a thing be possible? The library's cataloging system would have surely revealed its existence." Brother Timothy shrugs humbly. "I know it seems incredible, but I assure you that our records indicate this manuscript has been here all along, tucked away in an obscure corner of the storage room. It was only Brother Thomas' curiosity and keen eye for detail that led him to discover it." You exchange a knowing glance with your fellow scholar, both of you aware that the revelation raises more questions than answers. "Where is this alternate manuscript now?" you ask, intrigued by the prospect of examining it firsthand. Brother Timothy hesitates before responding. "I'm afraid Brother Thomas has taken it upon himself to show it to the master of the scriptarium. It's only a matter of time before word spreads throughout the monastery. As the news begins to spread like wildfire through the scriptorium, scholars and monks alike converge on your table, eager to discuss the implications of this astonishing discovery. The atmosphere is electric with anticipation as Brother Edwin leans in closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Imagine it, an entire manuscript containing secrets unknown for centuries. The potential for scholarly breakthroughs is staggering. But what does this mean for our understanding of London's scriptural world? Was Liber Niger deliberately edited to conceal these truths? You nod in agreement as the weight of Brother Edwin's words sinks in. Or perhaps, and I know it sounds far-fetched, but hear me out, there was no deliberate attempt at censorship. What if we're dealing with an entirely different text altogether? one that predates Liber Niger, containing fragments from lost works or even forbidden knowledge. As the room continues to buzz with speculation, you can't help but wonder, what secrets lie hidden within those missing pages of Liber Niger? And will Brother Thomas' discovery be enough to unlock them? With each passing moment, your curiosity grows. It's clear that this development has set off a chain reaction of events that will forever alter the landscape of London's scriptural world. You rise from your seat, joining the throng of scholars and monks flocking towards the master's chambers in search of answers. As you push through the crowd, Brother Edwin falls into step beside you. Think about it, what if this alternate manuscript is more than just a simple copy? What if it holds the key to understanding London's lost knowledge? You nod thoughtfully as you navigate the corridors leading to the master's chambers. The question lingers in your mind like a tantalizing puzzle, begging to be solved. But little do you know that the answers you seek will lead you down a labyrinthine path of discovery and mystery, one that threatens to upend everything you thought you knew about London's scriptural world. The sound of rain pattering against the windows has lulled you into a sense of calm, and now it's time to drift off to sleep with visions of medieval London dancing in your mind. You find yourself standing on a cobblestone street in the heart of the city, surrounded by half-timbered houses and narrow alleys. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth and smoke from the nearby chimneys. As you breathe it in, your eyes begin to wander over the rooftops, where apprentices are busy repairing damaged thatch or installing new tiles. The Weavers' Guild lies just ahead, its wooden sign creaking gently in the breeze as it bears the image of a stylized loom. You push open the door and step inside, leaving behind the cool rain and entering a warm, golden light. The air is thick with the smell of wool and dye, and you can hear the soft hum of looms as they weave fabric for the city's inhabitants. You notice an elderly weaver standing by one of the larger looms, carefully examining a length of unfinished cloth. His name tag reads Giles, and he looks up as you approach, his eyes squinting slightly behind wire-rimmed spectacles. He nods at you in greeting before returning to his work. "What's that?" you ask him, pointing to the cloth on the loom. Giles pauses for a moment, running his hand over the fabric's intricate patterns. "That," he says with a quiet pride, "is one of our finest pieces destined for the mayor's new cloak." As you continue your exploration of the guild, you notice that many of the weavers are working on cloth in muted colors, dark blues and grays, flecked with subtle hints of red. The fabrics seem different somehow, their textures rougher than what you've seen elsewhere. You ask one of the younger apprentices about this, and he leans in close to whisper, "It's been a while since we've made any cloth for war, master." He glances around nervously before continuing, "Ever since the king's men started getting more frugal with their purchases." Giles returns from his task, now carrying a large basket of woolen yarns. As he passes you on his way back to work, he murmurs quietly, "Don't mind old Tom over there. He thinks we should be making banners and flags again." He glances discreetly at an elderly man who's sitting by the window, watching the rain with a thoughtful expression. Old Tom looks up as if sensing Giles' gaze. His eyes narrow slightly before returning to his contemplation of the wet weather outside. You get the sense that old Tom is more than just a retired weaver. He seems like someone carrying secrets and stories from another era. As you continue your exploration, you come across a small room tucked away in the guild's attic space. Inside, rows of wooden looms line one wall, with apprentices sitting at each station, carefully weaving intricate patterns into fine silks. The air is thick with the scent of silk oil and faintly something like honey. You ask an apprentice about this peculiar smell, and she smiles shyly before answering. We're making a special cloth for the royal family's Christmas gifts. It's got tiny silver threads woven in to catch the light. The soft sound of looms humming in the background creates a soothing melody that blends with the patter of rain outside. As you stand there taking in this peaceful scene, your thoughts begin to wander back to those mysterious stone markers scattered throughout London. What if they're more than just cryptic reminders? What if they actually hold secrets about the city's scriptural world? As you ponder these questions, the warmth and light of the guild start to lull you into a state of relaxation. You notice that Giles is now working on repairing an old loom in one corner of the room, while old Tom sits by the window, his eyes lost in thought. The apprentices continue their work with quiet concentration, weaving fabrics that will eventually adorn the clothes and homes of London's citizens. As you settle deeper into this peaceful atmosphere, your eyelids begin to droop. Your thoughts wander further back in time. The scriptural world is said to have been influenced by a mysterious figure known only as the scribe. Legend has it that the scribe spent countless hours studying the intricacies of language and writing systems from across Europe. Some claim he even deciphered ancient texts hidden within London's walls, but these stories are shrouded in mystery. Giles pauses in his repair work to glance at you, perhaps sensing your drifting attention. He returns to his task with a quiet efficiency that is both soothing and mesmerizing. The sound of rain continues outside, creating an eerie sense of calm as the city settles into its slumber. You find yourself wondering about the scribe, who he might have been, what secrets he uncovered. But for now, these questions seem distant, fading away like mist in morning sunlight. As you settle deeper into this cozy atmosphere, your breathing slows and your thoughts grow quiet. The peaceful hum of looms in the background blends with the soothing patter of rain outside to create a lulling melody that guides you toward sleep. In one corner of the room, an apprentice is carefully finishing up a delicate piece, its intricate patterns shimmering softly as she works under the warm light of candles and lanterns. Her hands move deftly over the fabric, weaving in a gentle rhythm that seems to match the beat of your heart. As you let go of all thoughts and worries, the quiet sounds of the guild wash over you like a soothing balm, guiding you toward dreamland with its soft whispers of color and texture. And you feel yourself surrendering to its gentle pull, like a ship drifting on a calm sea. Your eyelids grow heavy, and your breathing slows as the soft sounds of the guild wrap around you in a comforting shroud. As you drift deeper into slumber, visions begin to dance across your mind's eye, fleeting images of the weavers at work, their hands moving with precision and purpose. You see threads of gold and silver weaving together like the stars on a clear night sky, woolen yarns bursting forth in rich textures that resemble the plumpest clouds, and silk strands glistening like moonlight dancing across still waters. Your mind wanders to the guild's great hall where artisans sit at their looms, hunched over with focused intent. The air is filled with the soft whir of spindles turning on distaffs, as women carefully wind skeins of wool into neat bobbins for later use in weaving. You watch a master weaver inspect his latest creation, a magnificent cloak woven from shimmering threads that seem to catch and reflect every hue of light like precious gemstones. The vision shifts, and you see yourself standing amidst the guild's many workbenches, surrounded by half-finished projects, unfinished tapestries with loose ends and uneven weave, wooden frames holding swatches of fabric still awaiting embroidery, and delicate lacework spilling across intricately carved wooden screens. The air is alive with the scent of wool, dyes, and oils, as skilled hands move deftly to craft each piece into something beautiful. In this dreamlike state, you start to notice the intricate details, the way sunlight filters through stained glass windows above, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the stone floor, the soft clinking of silver scissors against wooden frames as a weaver carefully trims excess thread, and the warm smell of baking bread wafting from a nearby oven, mingling with the scent of roasting coffee. Your vision shifts once more, this time to a bustling market square. Merchants call out their wares in thick accents. Woolen goods from Scotland, intricately patterned silks from Italy, and rare spices from far-off lands like Egypt or China. A group of children laugh as they play with threads left behind by the weavers, while an elderly woman haggles over a fine quality of silk with a gruff but wily merchant. As you watch this colorful scene unfold, a lone figure stands out, a young apprentice, watching with rapt attention as his master explains the finer points of weaving. You notice how intently he listens, taking in every word and gesture, how carefully he observes each thread's texture and color before adding it to their current project. Your vision begins to blur, colors bleeding into one another like watercolors on wet paper, but you continue to feel drawn back by the allure of this peaceful world. With a final fleeting glimpse of weavers at work, looms humming with industry, and guild members smiling as they carefully lay threads across wooden frames. You sink deeper still. In dreams within your dream, you're walking through streets crowded with people going about their daily lives, all woven together like the intricate patterns on fine tapestries. They move in harmony with each other, tradespeople hurrying to market, children laughing and chasing after their parents, women carrying baskets of fresh bread while men load their carts with goods from nearby farms. In this serene world, time loses meaning as you drift between waking and slumber, caught up in an eternal tapestry where past, present, and future blend together like the colors on a stained glass window. The soft glow of candles flickers like fireflies on a summer evening, casting shadows on the walls of your small bedchamber. The air is heavy with the scent of beeswax and lavender, carried by the gentle breeze from the open window. Outside, in the streets of medieval London, night has fallen over the city. The day's bustle has given way to a more subdued pace, as people retire to their homes or gather at taverns for evening entertainment. You are lying on your narrow bed, listening to the distant sounds of laughter and music drifting from the local alehouse. As you drift off into a light doze, your mind begins to wander through memories of the day's events. The smell of roasting meat wafts up from the kitchen below, mingling with the scent of baking bread. Your stomach growls softly in response, reminding you that it is time for supper. You imagine the savory flavors of stewed beef and vegetables, accompanied by a warm hunk of crusty bread. As you follow this train of thought, your attention turns to the Apothecaries Guild, which has its premises just down the street from where you live. The apothecary shop is one of those rare establishments that seems to defy time itself, always bustling with activity during the day, yet somehow managing to remain in a perpetual state of disarray. You often find yourself wondering how they do it, how an entire guild can function so efficiently despite being surrounded by chaos. Perhaps it's because their wares are so essential to daily life that people overlook the shop's untidiness. Or perhaps it's simply because no one has ever taken the time to tidy up after themselves. Tonight, however, something seems amiss. You recall walking past the Apothecaries Guild earlier in the day and noticing a small commotion outside their premises. It was nothing out of the ordinary, just a few apprentices hurrying about with bundles under their arms. But now that you think back on it, there seemed to be an unusual number of people gathered nearby. You try to shake off this memory as your eyelids grow heavy once more. But something nags at the edge of your consciousness. What if those people had been the Apothecaries Guild members themselves? What if they'd been gathering for some sort of meeting or announcement? Your thoughts begin to wander, conjuring images of candlelit rooms filled with hushed conversations and whispered secrets. Perhaps it's just a silly notion, but you can almost picture the look on Master Thomas' face as he stands before his guild members, sharing news that sends shockwaves through their ranks. Thomas was known for being a bit of a stickler when it came to protocol, always so precise in his movements and words that even the other apothecaries would chuckle at his fastidious nature. But what if tonight's gathering had been different? What if Thomas' usually calm demeanor had betrayed some hidden anxiety or urgency? Your mind drifts further into speculation, weaving a narrative around this hypothetical scenario. Perhaps Master Thomas has received word from Rome that the guild will be reorganizing its operations in light of new papal decrees. Or maybe there's been a change in leadership, something that would send ripples through the entire apothecary community. But as you ponder these possibilities, your thoughts begin to lose coherence and dissolve into the realm of dreams. Your eyes grow heavy once more, eyelids fluttering shut like petals on a flower. As sleep claims you, visions of candlelit rooms give way to half-remembered impressions. Master Thomas' stern expression, apprentices scurrying about with bundles under their arms, the soft glow of candles casting shadows on walls. You are now fully submerged in slumber's realm, where memories blend and fade like sandcastles by a seaside. In this quiet, liminal space between wakefulness and sleep, your imagination conjures more abstract shapes. Images from daily life begin to seep into your dreams. Master Thomas' frowning countenance, rows of apothecary jars lining the shelves in his shop, apprentices poring over dusty tomes filled with ancient remedies. These phantoms waft through your mind like wisps of fog on a winter morning, each one gradually losing definition until it dissolves into nothingness. Yet as you drift deeper still, fragments from the day's events reassemble themselves within your subconscious. The Apothecaries Guild vanishes and reappears in different guises. Sometimes it looms large in your dreamscape like a mountain range. At other times, its outlines blur until it becomes just another forgotten corner of medieval London. Yet even as your slumber deepens further into the realm of the half-remembered and half-imagined, where memories blur together with those from past lives or distant lands, something peculiar catches hold in the recesses of your mind. A memory long suppressed begins to reassert itself, a specific date etched into stone above the entrance to the Apothecaries' Guild. You recall seeing it earlier today while strolling by their premises. The year 1433. As you stand there frozen in recollection, a shiver runs down your spine. The memory is like a rusty gate creaking open, allowing a faint scent of old parchment and dust to waft into your mind's eye. You remember walking past the Apothecaries' Guild earlier today, the imposing stone facade gleaming in the morning sun. Your gaze had drifted upwards, taking in the intricate carvings that adorn the entrance. A pair of intertwined serpents coiled around a staff, their beady eyes seeming to watch as you passed. But it was something else that caught your attention, a small inscription etched into the stone above the entrance. A date worn smooth by time and weather, but still legible enough for you to recall, 1433. You had thought nothing of it at first, assuming it might be some forgotten anniversary or commemoration. Now, however, that memory seems to be taking on a life of its own. Your eyes scan the street, as if searching for answers in the crowded faces around you. People hurry past, oblivious to your distraction. A baker's cart rattles by, carrying an assortment of fresh bread and sweetmeats. A group of apprentices from the nearby tannery laugh and jest as they make their way down Cheapside. You shake off the feeling that something is amiss, telling yourself you're merely being fanciful. The Apothecaries' Guild has been here for centuries. What reason could there be to think it might vanish? And yet the memory lingers, refusing to be dismissed. As the day wears on, your mind wanders back to the guild time and again. You find yourself wondering about the people who work within those stone walls, the apothecaries themselves skilled in the art of healing, their apprentices learning the intricacies of potion making and herbalism from their masters. Do they know something you don't? Is there some hidden truth lurking beneath the surface? The streets begin to quiet as evening approaches. The sun dips below the rooftops, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. You make your way through the crowds, lost in thought, until finally you find yourself standing before the Apothecaries' Guild once more. This time, however, something feels different. A sense of unease settles over you as you glance upwards at the stone facade, and that inscription, 1433. It seems to leap out from the wall now, demanding attention. Your heart begins to quicken with a growing sense of foreboding. Suddenly, the thought strikes you like a blow. What if this date isn't just some forgotten anniversary? What if it's a countdown to something? Without thinking, you push open the heavy wooden door and step inside. The apothecary's shop is emptying out for the day. Apprentices are packing up their tools, while the masters themselves hurry about, checking that all is in order for the night ahead. You approach one of them, an elderly man with a wispy beard and spectacles perched on the end of his nose. "Excuse me," you say, your voice barely above a whisper. "I was wondering, what significance does this date hold?" 1433. The apothecary's eyes narrow as he regards you for a moment before responding in a low tone. "Ah, you've seen the inscription, have ye?" He glances about cautiously, ensuring no one is listening. "That date marks a rather significant event, I suppose. Some might call it a turning point." A shiver runs down your spine as he speaks. You sense that there's more to this than mere coincidence. and you're starting to suspect that the Apothecaries Guild holds secrets far beyond anything you could have imagined. What happened? You press on, leaning in closer. The apothecary leans against a nearby shelf, his expression serious. I'm not sure I should be telling ye this, he says finally, but on the night of January 24th, 1433, the Apothecaries Guild vanished. Your mind reels at the words. Vanished. It can't be true, and yet. He leans in closer still, his voice barely audible over the distant hum of conversation from outside. They say it was a magical occurrence, some sort of dark enchantment that swept through our halls like wildfire. When morning broke, we were left standing there, alone. The apothecary's words hang in the air like a challenge. You feel as though you're staring into an abyss, with no clear path forward to guide you. And then it hits you, a memory buried deep within your own mind, that same date etched on stone above the entrance, a sense of foreboding that had begun building hours ago, and now a realization dawns upon you. You have seen this before. As you wander through the quiet streets of medieval London, a warm breeze stirs the trees, rustling leaves and carrying scents from nearby markets. You pass by a small churchyard, its stone walls weathered to a soft gray that blends with the surrounding buildings. Among the gravestones, one catches your eye, an imposing slab bearing the name Edmund in bold letters. Your gaze lingers on Edmund's stone as you notice something peculiar. His date of death is listed as 1256, but there's no mention of who he was or what made him worthy of such a grand marker. Nearby graves are more forthcoming. Alice's stone tells the story of her life with her husband, Thomas, and their 3 children, while Henry's boasts about his military exploits in France. You ponder Edmund's significance as your footsteps quiet on the churchyard path. Perhaps he was a local lord or a wealthy merchant. The lack of information seems almost deliberate. You wonder if this is more than just an omission. What if the date on that stone is correct and everything else is wrong? As you continue to speculate, the sounds around you grow softer still. The distant clang of hammering from a nearby forge has faded into a gentle murmur. Market chatter dwindles as vendors prepare for closing time. The air cools slightly with the approaching night. You wander through another part of town, passing under an archway where a lone candle flickers in the darkness. This path leads you to St. Bodolph's churchyard, which is bustling with life, or at least, it seems so compared to Edmund's quiet resting place. Here, people have gathered for evening prayers and a brief service. As you observe from a discreet distance, an elderly man stands before the congregation, speaking in hushed tones about his own experiences as a young priest during the Great Plague of 1348. His words paint vivid pictures, candles illuminating skeletal hands grasping for blessings, people praying with fervor, seeking divine intervention to ease their suffering. You listen intently, your mind absorbing these tales while also lingering on Edmund's enigmatic stone back in the other churchyard. There must be some connection between this elderly priest and Edmund, perhaps a shared history or a long-forgotten event that only reveals itself through such fragmented narratives. As the service concludes, you blend into the evening crowd making its way home for dinner. You join the throngs of people shuffling along narrow streets, following scents of baking bread wafting from nearby ovens and cooking hearths. Your stomach growls in anticipation as you notice a food stall tucked away between two buildings. Roasted meats sizzling over an open flame, accompanied by steaming vegetables and freshly baked loaves. The aroma draws you closer, enticing your senses with the promise of warmth and nourishment on this chilly evening. At the counter, a gruff but kind-faced vendor greets you with a nod and asks what you'll have. You point to a joint of roasted beef, its juices dripping onto a bed of steaming greens. As he hands it over, you notice an old woman watching from across the street. Her eyes seem intent on something or someone. Curiosity piqued, you take your meal to a nearby bench and sit down beside a sleeping child, wrapped snugly in a warm cloak. The soft glow of candlelight casts long shadows across the stone floor as people begin to settle for the night, vendors closing up shop, children being tucked into bed with whispered good-night prayers. As darkness gathers, you take another bite of your meal, flavors blend together on your tongue, from savory roast beef to slightly sweet steamed greens. For a moment, all seems right with this quiet world. People are safe in their homes, food is plentiful for those who can afford it, and life's rhythms continue as they have for centuries. However, amidst these peaceful moments, Edmund Stone remains lodged in your mind, its peculiar silence an intriguing enigma that refuses to be silenced. You ponder the nature of his story. Was he a public figure or someone quietly influential? Perhaps there are whispers about him among those gathered at St. Botolph's service. You imagine asking the elderly priest who shared tales of 1348 what he might know of Edmund, but as you look around, no one seems willing to engage in such speculative conversations on this peaceful evening. Night deepens its hold on medieval London. People retreat into their homes, candles flicker and die out, plunging the streets back into darkness. Shadows grow longer still as stars twinkle above, a gentle lullaby for all who sleep beneath the city's quiet watchfulness. And yet, amidst this somnolent world, your thoughts linger on Edmund, his date of death marked with such precision, the void that surrounds him like an unspoken mystery waiting to be unraveled. As you wander through the quiet streets of medieval London, your mind still echoes with thoughts of Edmund's untimely demise and the secrets that shroud his final hours. The city's tranquility has a way of seeping into one's soul, making it easy to become lost in contemplation. You pause before a stone monument, running your fingers over the intricate carvings etched into its surface. The inscription reads, "In memory of Alice, beloved wife and devoted mother." Yet, as you gaze upon her name, something nags at the back of your mind, an inconsistency that refuses to be ignored. Where is her date of death? It seems almost unnatural for such a crucial detail to be omitted. Your curiosity now piqued, you begin to scan other nearby gravestones, searching for similar discrepancies. The names and dates are all there. Thomas the blacksmith, whose demise was clearly due to his profession, Agnes the weaver, who passed away at an advanced age, and William the apothecary, whose untimely death remains shrouded in mystery. Yet as you continue your survey of the stone tablets, one name catches your eye, a young woman named Alara. Her epitaph boasts a rather unusual phrase, "In memory of Alara who left this world with her heart full." The words dance before your mind's eye like fireflies on a summer evening. Well, what does it mean? Why the emphasis on her emotions at the moment of passing? You sense that there is more to these omissions and enigmatic phrases than mere mortal neglect or superstition. Something whispers in the shadows, urging you to dig deeper, an unspoken promise hidden within the cold stone walls. Your journey through this somnambulant city becomes a pilgrimage into its very heart, searching for answers amidst the silence of forgotten lives. You find yourself at the edge of the London Bridge, where the murky waters of the Thames seem to whisper secrets only known to those who wander along its banks after nightfall. Amidst the bridge's creaking wooden beams and rusty hinges, you catch a glimpse of a lone figure cloaked in shadows, an old man with eyes that twinkle like starlight on a clear winter evening. His presence is both unsettling and intriguing. He seems to embody the very essence of this city, its secrets, its mysteries, and its ancient pulse. "Who are you?" you ask him, your voice barely above a whisper in deference to the peacefulness surrounding you. "I am a chronicler," he responds with an air of quiet reverence. "I record the lives of those who have passed through this city, their triumphs, failures, and whispered secrets." You seek knowledge about Edmund's fate. His was not an unusual case. Your eyes lock onto his as if grasping for the truth. The old man takes a deep breath before continuing. "In medieval London, there are many paths to understanding mortality. Not all death dates were inscribed with precision. Some were deliberately omitted, either due to superstition or a desire to avoid raising suspicion about the manner of passing." A chill runs down your spine as you grasp his words. This is what's been hidden behind those tantalizing omissions. "Ilara, for instance," he says softly, "left this world with her heart full, an unusual phrase that alludes to a specific circumstance, death by love or sacrifice. In some cases, families preferred not to acknowledge the true nature of their loved one's demise." Your mind reels as connections begin to form. The stone monuments tell more than they seem. It's merely up to you to decipher their language. The old man's eyes sparkle in the darkness. You see now that death is not always so cut and dried, especially within these ancient city walls, where whispers of secrets and hidden truths dance through its very fabric. As he vanishes into the night like a ghostly apparition, you're left to ponder his words, an invitation to unravel the mysteries woven into every stone monument. In this quiet moment beneath the watchful stars, you realize that your quest has just begun, an odyssey of discovery within the heart of medieval London's labyrinthine streets and tombstones. And yet, a nagging voice whispers doubts in the shadows. Will secrets remain hidden forever? Or will they reveal themselves to those willing to brave the night? You find yourself standing on a quiet street in medieval London, surrounded by tall buildings that seem to lean in towards each other as if sharing secrets. The air is crisp and cool, with a hint of dampness from the nearby Thames River. A faint scent of wood smoke wafts through the air, carried on the gentle breeze. As you breathe in deeply, you notice the sound of distant chanting rising above the murmur of evening traffic. It's a soft, repetitive chant that seems to be coming from somewhere near Cheapside Market, where merchants and traders still linger after hours. You can't quite make out what they're saying, but it has a soothing quality to it. You continue walking through the narrow streets, your footsteps echoing off the stone buildings. The cobblestones beneath your feet are smooth in some places, worn down by centuries of foot traffic, while others remain rough and uneven, threatening to trip up the unwary pedestrian. As you round a corner, you catch sight of a faint light flickering from within one of the nearby houses. Curiosity gets the better of you, and you approach the door cautiously, not wanting to startle anyone inside. The light comes from a single lantern hanging from the ceiling, casting eerie shadows on the walls as it sways gently in the breeze. You peer through the window, trying to see what's going on within. Inside, an elderly woman is stirring a bubbling cauldron over an open fire, while another person, probably a young apprentice or servant, sits at a nearby table, intent on their needlework. The air inside is thick with the scent of simmering soup and baking bread. You watch for a few moments as they work in silence, the only sound coming from the gentle clinking of utensils against pots. As you continue to observe this peaceful scene, your gaze falls upon an old stone plaque set into the wall near the doorframe. It's weathered and worn but still legible, or at least, it seems that way until you take a closer look. The date is difficult to read due to the wear on the surface of the stone. You squint in an attempt to decipher the inscription. As your eyes adjust, you begin to make out some letters, M. Something about mid-13th century catches your eye specifically, a possible mention of 1253. You wonder if this might be one of those rare cases where history got it wrong, as some people like to say. As you ponder the plaque's significance, the elderly woman looks up from her cauldron and notices you standing there in the shadows. For an instant she freezes, her eyes narrowing slightly before a gentle smile softens her features. She beckons you inside with a wave of her hand, inviting you into their quiet world. You step back from the door, unsure if this is the right moment to intrude upon their evening routine. As you hesitate, you feel the cool night air enveloping your skin once more, and you begin to notice other details that catch your attention, like a few wisps of smoke drifting upwards through a nearby window or the quiet rustle of leaves in an adjacent alleyway. The merchant's wife, noticing your reluctance, beckons again with her hand this time. She gestures towards the warm glow emanating from within, and seems to be inviting you to join them for supper. The scent of soup wafts outwards once more, tempting your senses as you consider accepting their offer. Your stomach growls softly at the thought of a hot meal on a chilly evening like this one. You find yourself lingering by the doorframe longer than intended, wondering what mysteries lie within, not just in the woman's cooking, but also in that peculiar stone plaque with its possible misreading of history. Eventually, you decide to turn away from the merchant's house and continue your exploration of medieval London under cover of darkness. The night air seems full of secrets waiting to be uncovered as you wander through narrow alleys and passageways, sometimes losing sight of what's ahead, but always being drawn by the promise of discovery hidden just beyond the next corner. Your footsteps carry on into the evening calm, quiet enough not to disturb anyone nearby, yet still loud enough that you can sense your own presence within this city. The night wears on, with each new step opening up fresh possibilities for exploration and contemplation, as darkness enfolds everything in its vast, silent shadow. You pause near a street lamp some distance from the merchant's house, where two people are engaged in hushed conversation, an elderly man leaning against a nearby wall while his younger companion paces back and forth. Their words are difficult to make out due to their low tone, but seem focused on something related to trade or commerce. As you listen more closely, your attention drifts towards the sounds of city life around you, distant clanging from hammering metalworkers, muffled laughter carrying across rooftops, and occasionally a faint shout or two that seems as though it might signal an argument brewing somewhere deeper in the night. Yet despite all these ambient noises blending into one another, there's still something calming about being here. Your gaze drops to your feet once more, noticing how far you've wandered from your original starting point near Cheapside Market, and yet feeling no urge to return immediately due to some newfound fascination with this medieval London of yours. It seems that the longer you walk through these winding streets at night, the less defined their boundaries become until it's as if nothing exists beyond what lies directly ahead. You recall a time-honored tradition of placing lanterns along city walls and roads for navigation purposes, often in conjunction with more conventional lighting sources like candles or torches. The image floats to mind of rows upon rows of these softly glowing lights, each one radiating its warm color into the night air, as if beckoning travelers deeper into this mystical world. The thought reminds you that, although a great deal has changed since those lanterns were installed, perhaps centuries past by now, much still remains unchanged within London's ancient heart. And in all probability, the city will continue to evolve with each passing day just like any other place on Earth, its very essence intertwined with countless stories yet unknown. As you absorb this atmosphere of continuity and change side by side, your footsteps carry forward into another part of town where sounds grow fainter until they're almost imperceptible except for one particular aspect. The soft hiss from a nearby blacksmith's forge where flames lick at glowing metal pieces, casting shadows on walls nearby. You pause again in contemplation as night draws its shadows deep around everything, but still holds within it an atmosphere of expectation and curiosity. As I pause to absorb the nocturnal ambience, a faint rustling sound catches my attention from the nearby alleyway. It's the soft murmur of voices, carried on the breeze like whispers in the darkness. My curiosity is piqued as I strain to listen more intently, trying to discern what language they might be speaking. The blacksmith's forge seems to have grown quieter now, its hiss reduced to a gentle susurration as the flames dance and flicker against the metal pieces suspended above them. The shadows on the nearby walls appear to be deepening, as if drawn into the night itself like dark tendrils. I find myself pondering the mysteries hidden within these silhouettes. The murmured conversation in the alleyway grows louder, a sense of urgency creeping beneath its tone. It's hard to distinguish individual words or phrases amidst the indistinct murmurings, but it sounds like several people are discussing something, perhaps arguing over some point. The hushed tones seem at odds with the earlier atmosphere of expectation that clung to the darkness. As I stand there lost in thought, a faint glow begins to emanate from a nearby window. It's the soft luminescence cast by an oil lamp placed on a windowsill above the alleyway entrance. The light casts long shadows across the cobblestones below, like skeletal fingers reaching out into the night. A figure appears within the frame of the doorway, a young woman with her back to me as she peers upward at something in the room. The conversation in the alleyway ceases abruptly, and I sense an expectant stillness settle over everything once more. The blacksmith's forge remains quiet, its shadows absorbing any lingering sounds into their dark folds. As I continue watching the scene unfolding above, a subtle movement from within catches my eye. The woman turns to face me. For a fleeting moment, our eyes meet across the alleyway, and an understanding seems to pass between us like electricity in the air. Her gaze is sharp with curiosity, yet tempered by caution. Mine responds kindredly, wondering what secrets she might hold or share beneath this nocturnal veil of darkness. She doesn't acknowledge me openly, nor does she reveal anything about her presence here. Instead, she nods almost imperceptibly toward a doorway opposite the alleyway entrance before vanishing into its shadows. Her brief appearance leaves me with an unspoken understanding that there's something in these night hours worth uncovering, perhaps even hidden languages waiting to be deciphered. A sudden chill runs down my spine as I realize the oil lamp on her windowsill casts flickering shadows onto adjacent walls, weaving patterns reminiscent of old letters or symbols used by long-forgotten scribes. It's almost as if our brief meeting has unlocked something within me, an intuition that draws closer to solving a riddle hidden in plain sight. Curiosity propels me toward the doorway opposite hers. It's slightly open, beckoning like an enigmatic smile from unknown lips. Stepping inside, I find myself in a narrow stairway leading downward into darkness. There are no lanterns here, only faint moonlight filtering through a small window overhead casts eerie silhouettes on walls below. A breath of cool air greets me as I descend the creaking stairs. Dampness rises from hidden cellars beneath this part of London's medieval heart, mingling with scents carried on passing night breezes. It feels as though time itself has slowed within these shadowy recesses, an anticipation that seems to grow heavier with each step downward. My hand brushes against the cold stone wall as I pause at a landing below. It appears worn smooth by countless unseen hands over centuries past, their touch leaving behind whispers of history waiting for rediscovery. Tonight you've traveled through the mist-shrouded alleys of medieval London, where shadows danced upon the walls and distant fires cast a golden glow on the cobblestones. Memories swirled like tides going out to sea as we whispered secrets about the breadwinner's conundrum, the famine of '53 that left its mark on the city's history, and the mystery of the disappearing doomsday book that still lingers in our collective imagination. The Cellar of Sind. Paul's revealed ancient tales etched into its stones, while whispers from a water clock echoed through the night air. Each thread led us deeper into the tapestry of life in medieval London. Yet beneath these disparate stories lies a common heartbeat, the human experience fragile, resilient, and intertwined with the city itself. The threads we've woven together are testaments to the intricate web of lives lived, struggles overcome, and memories forged in this ancient metropolis. If you'd like to keep exploring, you can gently tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. And if you feel awake enough, leave a comment and share where in the world you're listening from. As you surrender to slumber's gentle pull, allow the recollections of the past night to sink below the surface of thought, carried away by the quiet current of darkness. The city's secrets will remain, waiting for your return whenever the moon is full and the night air whispers its mysteries once more. May memory, like a river, flow steadily through your dreams, nourishing the soil of your soul. Time stands still in the silence that enfolds you now, as does the earth itself, patient and eternal, holding within it all stories yet to be told.